Welcome to the council chamber for this additional council meeting. So we're going to be live streaming for the first time when we're all together, which is a bit of a change. So the live streaming when in Zoom meetings it's gone pretty well. There's been good numbers watching that, and so now that we're physically together, being able to carry that on is great. This is going to be a bit of a test at times, I'm sure, and if there's anything that goes slightly awry, I'm sure that IT team will be alert and fixing it. So anyway, welcome back, welcome out of lockdown, and welcome back to the chamber.
Yes, great to be back.
So first up, just ask, are there any apologies? Move on to any declarations of interest. None of those. Okay. We'll now go on to confirmation of previous meeting minutes, 4.1 on page 6 of the agenda.
I'll move.
Okay, good. Councillor Hopkins, seconded Deputy Mayor Tavendale. Any comments?
No, none, sir.
Right, we'll put that then. Those in favour of those be adopted, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? It's carried. Nice not having to ask for hands up anymore. Right, so just move on to my report, 5.1 on page 17. I shall take that as read. There's obviously various things, everything's carrying on in the background, and there's been a lot of other activities going on. We continue to live in a quite fast moving situation. Example would be last week going to the Canterbury Meal Forum, and as requested by Councillor Halalele, talking to the Canterbury mayors about the issues of migrant workers at Mount Cook, when they'd already just announced that actually the Hermitage was reopening. So there's things that are happening like that, but it's very hard to keep it really quite up to date. But happy to take any questions on what's there, and give further update on anything that's needed. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you for the report again. Just out of curiosity, these tourism fundings, first 400,000 TWL has applied for on page 21 of the agenda in your report. How is it tagged to anything? I mean, the other tranche of money, the Strategic Tourism Assets Protection Program, that's obviously we're saying the penguin colony is such an asset, and funding will be applied for that. So what is the first 400,000 general?
No, it's for destination management and planning.
What does destination management mean?
It's basically making sure that it's around marketing, and it's around making sure that things are ready, attractions are ready, and so forth here. So it's looking after all of the elements of making sure that when people do come to, first of all, you attract them to the district, and then there's things that they go to. So unfortunately, it doesn't apply to things like information systems, which is one of the key issues at the moment. Any other questions?
Just about your Zoom meetings about communications. Just want to know if you expect anything to come from that, or what direction those sort of discussions are going.
Yeah, they were interesting. I think it's really looking at where are the issues in New Zealand, and presumably MB didn't go in, Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment didn't go into the reasons exactly why they were doing them, other than this is to help with rollout of future work. So reading between the lines, hopefully it does mean that there's going to be more funding going into that, and helping to look after areas which aren't covered too well. As I said to them, one of the best things that they could do is actually talk to one as we come out of the lockdown, talk to the Ministry of Education about the things that they had to do to step up and get their students online and make sure that they had things, where were the shortcomings, and just look at all of those sorts of things. But certainly giving our perspective as a provincial council with a lot of rural area, trying to fill those gaps and how they're best done, and trying to make it so that there is further investment in there. We have lots of businesses around the district that happen to be farms, and they need to be able to access good internet, and they don't ideally they don't want to spend $5,000 or $10,000 trying to get internet onto their properties. So there's opportunities there, and hopefully they take those on board. Councillor Wallstein?
Yeah, Mayor Kircher, just to congratulate you and also the regulatory team regarding the code compliance for Dots Castle.
Yes.
That was a great publicised opportunity for council and for Dot and for Waitaki. So well done for not just giving them the normal old piece of paper.
Yeah, no, it was well done.
Congrats to the
well done to the staff. Putting all that together, and some wonderful creative writing for the code of compliance itself. Some wonderful bagpipe playing by Councillor Kingan.
Yes.
And he got to play on top of the castle. So
Almost overexposure.
Windy day, was it?
It was well covered by his parapets. But yeah, no, well done to the team, and certainly with the event, with the whole situation getting caught on TV1 to put TV3,
Yes.
and other media. It's good publicity for the district. Any other questions? So I'd like to move if we receive my reports. Councillor Newton, thank you, and Councillor Wallstein. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? That is carried. Now move on to the CE's report. And Mr. what's your report?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kircher. I'll take the report as read and happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Okay, questions, please. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for that fact sheet on Invercargill. Some really valuable information in there, not least of it being our dependence on tourism, 40% of the national tourism expenditure. But look, the questions I wanted to ask you relate to the Action for Healthy Waterways package. Everyone's sort of faffing around at the moment about pulling down statues. I think we should pull down a few statutes, including this one. There are four things that I can identify here that looks as though we're going to have to spend more money. There's a requirement to gain information on current in-stream structures and establish a work program to provide for fish passage. It's the whole question of feedlots and stock holding areas which fail to meet minimum standards. The new MPSFM will include a compulsory value for Mahinga Kai, requiring regional councils to support Tangata Whenua in implementing this value. And we have to direct councils to improve water quality at places where people swim and recreate. So where's the money coming from? I mean, has David Parker put his money where his mouth is and offered any local authority some money to do these four things?
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Most of these provisions relate to regional council responsibilities. So the Waitaki District Council's responsibilities revolve around land use and land use planning. So these things will obviously have an impact on district plan preparation, but also in relation to monitoring and enforcement, which is also an element which has been raised over the last few days in relation to the Mackenzie Basin Alignment Program. But as you know, this council has been taking quite affirmative action over over recent times in relation to inappropriate land use, and prosecutions have been taken where those have been appropriate. What this material indicates is that the environment within which we operate as a council is changing, and we simply need to be aware of that.
Whether it's regional councils, our ratepayers, every person, and particularly in rural councils like ours, will end up paying more, won't they? And the government's not putting any money, as usual, into the new obligations that it seems to be willing to impose.
I think this is a topic that it would be useful to have a briefing from the Otago Regional Council and Canterbury Regional Councils on.
And maybe Federated Farmers as well. Mary, can I just ask then one final question? I would like you and Fergus to raise this at rural and provincial, because I'm a bit frustrated that LG&Z said nothing. Once again, it looks as though central government is shoveling obligations on us and not backing them up with funding. And I think you guys should, rattle the bars of their cages. I really do.
Yep, I'm happy to take that on board.
Councillor McGrath, questions. Thank you, Mayor. Just in relation to Jim's comment, is the 700 million under the 15 key actions the funding that you were perhaps talking about, or Councillor Hopkins was talking about? That was my first question, is I thought the 700 million was to cover those key actions that are listed down below there, which includes some of those things that Jim was talking about. But my more important question is the statistics spending on page 33 is for Otago, which in some respects is a bit irrelevant to us in the Waitaki district. And I just wonder whether there is any more analysis that you could give us at some point as to the retail spending in the Waitaki as opposed to Otago. Otago would include obviously Queenstown and all the other areas of Dunedin, but this is more specifically for just the Waitaki. So is it possible to get that information?
Yes, we've got an active project underway to acquire that information. As you pointed out, this material is quite blunt. However, again, it provides that wider context within which we're operating. We are unusual as a local authority that straddles two regions, Otago and Canterbury, as you know, and the data is quite different for both of those regions. There are products available which we can access, and our pandemic economic recovery manager, Jerry Quinn, is engaged with a number of other members of the team looking at products that can provide us more or less real-time data, which is what you need as decision makers. As you alter various policy levers and as this board stimulus package comes into play, it's important for you to be able to see how those actions are playing out in the real world environment. So the live dashboard reporting, which you will shortly be receiving in relation to Council's internal financial management, will soon, we hope, be accompanied by live economic data for the district and the wider regions as well. So yes, that's in hand. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wolfson.
Yeah, just a similar comment, Fergus, if I can, on page 31, under spotlight on at-risk areas, tourism. The second paragraph there says, over the past 5 years, tourism expenditure in the region, which is Otago, has grown an average of 6%, so 30% in the last 5 years. But once again, it's nothing there for Waitaki. As Mr. McGrady said, that will include Dunedin and Queenstown. So can we find out how much the tourism sector has grown in Waitaki as opposed to
yes,
the whole of Otago?
Yes, we can. Actually, Waitaki's tourism growth has been quite good, so 50% above the regional average, if you like the national average. But again, what you really need is the most up-to-date current data possible. This data, although very useful and interesting, is almost verging on historical.
It is, yeah.
So we need to get much more relevant data as in timeliness, and that is we're hot on the track of that.
Okay, great. So this graph is going to show you very. I'd like to see it go back up again.
Councillor Hallelady.
Just looking at page 32, just around the information regarding the benefits and subsidies, there's quite a bit quite clear as we anticipated. Do you have any information about the national programs that MSD are going to be rolling out to kind of encourage employment and training opportunities?
There's obviously a lot of activity in this area, and Helen Algo would be well placed to be able to answer that question in detail. Things are changing on an almost daily basis in relation to those elements.
Councillor Pavender.
Just to follow up on that, firstly. Those kind of people, and Helen Elvis probably very much so, we're missing through the committee structure, not meeting with those people. So maybe there might be times when in the next little while we have those kind of people come and talk to us, because I think we're probably missing an expertise a little bit. Some discussions. But the other question I had was just around your presentation by youth-based music management.
Sorry, I missed
The presentation by youth-based music management.
yes, we're looking at ways to more efficiently utilise the space that we have, and following COVID-19, the remote working experience during the lockdown period was extremely positive. So not all, but the majority of staff reported functioning in a more productive way working remotely, and it's very likely that a number of staff can have their productivity maximised by having an amalgam of working in office and remotely. Part of the analysis being undertaken at the moment involves a consultancy called Unispace, which analyses workplace behaviour and needs, and then they will be reporting through to us on recommendations in relation to how we can reduce the need for further office expansion as the district and council grows into the future, thereby avoiding expenditure on office space, which is an important element of cost saving given COVID-19 and its impact.
Councillor Kingan.
Mr. Power, just further to that, are there staff still working from home?
There are, in particular, areas such as in the assets area, some of the teams there are working from home from time to time. We will be making some long-term decisions in relation to the nature of workplace working arrangements once we have the report from Unispace and we're able to have some concrete data to go on. In the meantime, we have developed operational policies surrounding the remote working environment and expectations on staff, etc. And those policies and operational procedures also include trial periods, just to ensure that we're satisfied that any staff that are working remotely are doing so responsibly and their productivity is not lower than it might otherwise be.
Councillor Hopkins.
Just apropos of that, Mr. Power, do you have any goals that you've set, or targets that you've set yourself, or that you and the EMT have set? In other words, have you said, we want an outcome that will see everyone back in one building and not a requirement to release floor space in the second building? Is that one of the objectives that you've set for yourself?
No. Essentially, we'll wait for the data to arrive, and the data will inform the decision making.
Councillor McRobbie.
Final question from me, Fergus. Just the comings, there's 4 comings and no goings. No goings is good, but the 4 comings, are any of those positions new positions, or are they replacing existing roles that people have left from? Page 40, 40.6, page 40.
Yes, the systems accountant is a new position. This position was approved several months ago following the recommendations of our auditors, who believe that our capabilities in the finance area were not sufficient to undertake the workload involved. The others are replacements, and the internal redeployment is essentially a promotion for Tristan Hope, who has moved to the position of senior compliance officer.
Can I just add, Mr. Hope? Sorry, just to that, great to welcome two of our staff back again. The two better staff we left, Mr. Power. It's great to welcome them back to the staff again. So
yeah, and I think that is really positive, because when you have staff who are ready and willing to return, it does say something about the workplace environment.
it is a positive sign, indeed, yes. Yeah.
I was going to make comment on that myself and just note that the staff bungee is still working well. and it is a positive sign that people do want to come back in. So it's good. Okay, any other questions? Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, sorry, just one more very quickly. Great article on Dawn Aerospace. And I'm wondering, on page 47, there's a reference to the company's operations being split between here and Holland, not particularly Delft. Have we, or has Gerard explored any possibility of connections with Delft and with the university there, maybe with a sort of an off-campus operation here, anything of that sort? Just occurs to me reading this that perhaps we could do that.
Councillor, it's probably impracticable, given the nature of the specialist work undertaken by Delft. They operate one of the world's most advanced supersonic testing chambers for testing aircraft and spacecraft. These are highly expensive and specialised pieces of apparatus, and you need the throughput in order to justify the investment. However, in discussions with Dawn Aerospace, our anticipation is that as they move beyond the testing phase, there is an expectation that Dawn Aerospace personnel will be located permanently in Oamaru, and these, of course, will be highly paid space engineers, and that's going to be a very positive thing for the district. There's also, of course, the spin-off in terms of this particular magazine. It's an engineering magazine which is read by every engineering company up and down the country. And when they see that Oamaru is a suitable location for space operations, then I imagine that one or two of them will be turning their minds to the question as to whether or not it's suitable for other engineering activities as well. So it's very positive signalling going out about the fertility and attractiveness of this part of the country for business, especially smart business.
So I move we receive the report. Councillor McGrovey, Councillor King, seconded. Thank you. Right, those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And those against, that is carried. Now move to item 6.1 on page 50, the key directions for the 2020-21 annual plan. Topic of a number of workshops, and just welcome Mr. Wells and Mr. Searle. So, Mr. Pope, we'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Stand, because I'll probably go out of camera.
And the world will be the poorer for that.
Oh, thank you, Jack.
The bread isn't finance.
Right. This report is very different from the reports that are generally presented at this time of year, with most draft annual plans. The decisions left to be made at this stage of the plan development are very much a refinement, considering of feedback from the community and really adjusting things to meet some very specific needs. As a reminder, when we first started working on this, no one had really heard of COVID-19. When we made the last series of decisions, we still hadn't moved into lockdown. So the world has changed quite significantly from where we started to where we are now. That means there is quite a bit of different information contained in the report and a significantly greater number of resolutions than you would normally see at this time of year. So there are some quite important decisions to be made in those resolutions. I think once I've finished talking, we'll try and keep it brief, but there are a number of matters I do need to cover. It will just suggest we move through those one by one and just sort of discuss, respond, and make a decision on each item. There was commentary in the community, in the media, and by some central government politicians about the advisability of councils having very low rate increases for the 2021 year. And I think it is important to recognise, I think that was more focused on a concern that council was going to arbitrarily cut services to the community in the wake of COVID-19, rather than to sort of achieve some form of affordability, and really painted with a single brush, whereas every council can respond to it differently given its circumstances. What we have here to achieve a average 0% increase is really two blocks of decisions. The first are responses that will have really a 1 year impact, and those are the drop and reduction in revenue in some key areas that are included in the report, and then a responding reduction in funding of some longer term items in response to those. They actually pretty much balance out if you cut the information contained in the report a wee bit differently. The other way to reduce what was originally a reasonably significant rate increase was the redeployment primarily of the accumulated Whitestone contract dividend from sort of a project focus to very much an operational funding focus. And the other was some reasonably significant changes in some of the underlying assumptions that were used to build up the budget, particularly in relation to the labour market that would exist in 2021 and really what employment expectations would be. So really making those two big blocks of changes is how it is proposed to move back to an overall an average 0% increase. So that's that was quite a change from the position that was originally envisaged, and it really needs to meet a couple of tests that's set out in the Local Government Act. One is it prudent? That's really we can advise, give you some advice, but it's really a decision for yourselves to make. Our advice certainly is that it is prudent. We're using accumulated reserves, making what we believe are the best estimates of costs and revenue for the coming year. And although it will create some difficult decisions, I think over the coming probably 3 years, none of this is irreversible. So I believe that these are prudent decisions in terms of the Act. The other test is it contributing to the well-beings? And again, I certainly believe that it is, that given the pressures that this community is facing, showing constraint on a cost that everyone is affected by one way or the other is certainly enhancing the well-being at this point in time. That leads to a number of the other recommendations. It will be an unbalanced budget, so there will be a resolution about that. But that reason it is unbalanced is because council is using reserves, which everyone else would call savings, to address, you create these for a rainy day, well, this is it. Again, that seems an entirely appropriate and prudent use of those funds. The last thing I want to talk about is the use of the dividend in a slightly different way. So that's item 4. Again, that is just an option available to you to get as many ratepayers as possible to that zero amount, really by just varying from the revenue and financing policy. Again, that is something that you have discretion over, and as long as you are clear about it to the community, which is the reason for the specific resolution, that seems to be a prudent and advisable step to at least be discussed. So those are my introductory comments. I'll respond to some things, but it's probably going to mostly be Mr. Searle and Mr. Wells. With that, let the questions and discussion begin.
Okay, so perhaps go to some more general questions if we can. And probably what we'll do is work our way through recommendations once we get to that point. And then further questions potentially on those as well. But Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, Paul, thank you very much for this report. Look, I've got three general questions. First, on page 52, in that third paragraph down, you talk about the targeted rate 2020-21. In order to achieve rates that are approximately like for like, should also increase to maintain relativity, allowing for the growth factor as proposed at rates, etc., etc. Now, so basically, you're saying because of growth, our rate has increased, our rates are going up, although only by 0.3%. Over the weekend, Christchurch City reported that their total rate increase was going down because of growth, and they had miscalculated the impact of growth on additional properties and revenue from them initially. So how can they take a rate increase down because of growth and we take it up?
Sorry, without knowing the specifics of Christchurch, I'm just going to have to make a guess. Generally, in the past, Waitaki has not allowed for any growth in the database, and we've just taken that as additional revenue and dropped it into the surplus because it's been a relatively small amount. Growth councils all factor that in because it is so significant, and I think Christchurch has been a growth council. So if that factor is wrong, or they get further information and they have to adjust that growth factor downwards, then they need to increase their rates to get the same amount. So,
Except that they took their rate increase down, not up. That's the point that I was just making.
yeah, well, then I don't have.
No, okay. May I ask one other question? Just on page 55, you talk about the level of service provided to the community in the second paragraph, and you say a review of what is essential and the way services are delivered is required. And you also say that it should be part of the next LCP process. Can we set a date today when it will start, when that review will begin? Because I would have thought if it's going to be part of the LTP process, we have to start that review this year. Would you agree?
That would definitely have to start really as early as possible.
So August, September, can we commit to that?
You will be the ones that need to make the commitment of time.
Okay.
So that is
All right.
your decision.
And just one, Medicosa, very quickly on page 56, at the bullet points 2 and 3 at the top, there's a reference to us endorsing something at the May 26 workshop and recommending at the same workshop. Now, no decisions can be made at workshops, so am I right to say that we will get a resolution covering both those matters on the 30th? Because as of this moment, nothing has been formally resolved in either of those in relation to either of those matters, only informally agreed at workshops. And there's nothing in resolutions today. I'm not complaining about it, but I'm just flagging that I think we may need to do something formally and asking you if you think I'm right.
Just if I could comment on those, I definitely take those as that we've informally endorsed and formally recommended. They will be part of fees charges in that first one, both of those cases, I believe. which we'll be adopting on the 30th.
That's fine, that's fine. Yeah.
Thank
you.
Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kircher. Just a couple of questions, Mr. Hope, or other members of your team. On page 50, I'll get back to it and find it. You talk about in point number 4, find it again. Point number 4 agrees to deviate from the revenue and financing policy. Does council need to actually amend that policy, or can we just agree to deviate from a set policy of council? What's the process for doing that? Explain, please.
You can basically just decide to vary from it. You don't need to go through and amend the whole policy. I mean, we vary from the revenue and financing policy all the time, and it sets targets for like the levels of fees to be recovered from certain activities. So they are all targets and a general aim and policy position. But this is saying, well, if you've considered the matter and in this circumstance, we're going to vary from it.
Okay, thank you. And on page 52, the second bullet point, increased levels of unfunded depreciation, subject to a full review to be undertaken in the future in the long-term plan process. Can you give any indication of how much of a difference council can make to the amount of depreciation? I know you can't prejudge a review, but to actually do the review, there must be some expectation. What that expectation may be?
No, I can't give you an answer. I think it will generally, at the moment, the unfunding is in 2 primary areas. One is the riding area because of the impact of the NZTA subsidy, so that really won't vary, the subsidy varies. The other is in the property area, and that's very much looking at a facility and deciding what its long-term future is and the long-term community need. I would have thought, given the ones that we looked at, it would be in and around that amount, because going any further than that, you're probably getting into operational properties, and then the value drops off quite significantly. So
yeah,
once you've passed it.
Yeah, I'll just respond, because in terms of unfunding of depreciation, that's one manner in which council can attempt to restrict rate rises in future. So it's an important matter to be considered. So thank you for your advice.
And an ongoing reduction.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Percival.
Yeah, through the chair, Mr. Hope, the 330 odd you're taking out of the dividend, Whitestone dividend, for targeted towards water and sewage in certain areas, the balance of that dividend, has that been allocated to the general rates, or where's that gone?
Yes, it has. It's affecting the general rate, the district services rate, and the UAGC. So it benefits all people, all ratepayers in the district. But the 336,000 that you agree to vary from the policy will favourably treat people who would otherwise receive larger than zero or larger than close to zero average rate increases because of developments to those facilities in those areas.
So by following your recommendations, we're giving everyone a fair slice of the cake. Would that be fair?
Yes. I mean, either recommendation divvies up the rates such that there is not a significant rate increase in the area. Option 2 refines that some go up marginally while others benefit more.
So effectively, two-thirds is still going across
Right.
the entire district.
But we've balanced the rating for the whole district. Thank you.
It's certainly important that we do that, because we've definitely given the community the message that their rates accounts won't change too much, and that's what they'll be expecting. So otherwise, we're looking at potentially getting up to closer to 10% increases in some cases, and equivalent decreases in others. So it's a good use of it. We can only use it once because it was a record dividend. And, I don't know what we'll get next time round. But the good thing is that everyone across the district's benefiting from it, and we will come coming out with relatively even rates amounts that people will be expecting. So, yeah, well done to the team for the work they have done, because it says a wee bit of balancing of numbers to make sure that happens. Right, any other questions, councillors? What I might do is, if someone's happy to move and someone else is happy to second all of the recommendations, and then we'll work our way through them, and I'll put them one by one.
I'm happy to move them. I'll foreshadow a minor and I hope non-controversial change to 6, which I can let you have now, or cover it when we come to it, whichever you prefer in the future.
That's when we come to it.
Okay.
See how that looks at that time. Someone got a second? Councillor Haldaly, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll work through. The first one's pretty straightforward. So just receiving the information that we requested on the 26th of May. So receiving that here today. I'm just going to put that. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Moving on to number 2. This it's not part of the decisions, but it's important to note that we are doing with what we are doing. There will be some minor change to what people's rates are. Most significant, there will be new properties coming on stream. So someone who's done subdivision and paying rates differently because of that, or they've built a house, or they've done some other building work which has added value. So there'll be some changes in those particular areas. We're budgeting 0.3% overall increase in the overall rates. For everyone else, there'll be a few changes because of things like boundary changes between Akureyri and Corridor, and the other things that are noted in there. So do you have anything to add to that, team?
And I think, yeah, with the dividend, they'll even be reduced even further, that those communities that have significant changes in level of service, particularly on their targeted rates, are likely to see a bigger movement than the larger ones with a bit flatter, particularly the rural properties.
The important thing for those that go up, there's others that go down. It's a balancing act. So I'll put that because we're just noting those particular details. Those in favour of 2A through D, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, that's carried. Okay, number 3 is confirming the recommendations made in deliberations on 26th of May as summarised in Table 1. So if we go to Table 1 and ask the team to discuss that. Page 52. Any comments you want to add to it, or just go straight to?
If there's really any questions about any of the specific items, we'll just answer those. Try to give them a reasonable amount of detail.
So we're budgeting 896,000 less for remuneration and related budgets.
Yes.
It's a big drop, isn't it?
Yes.
Any other questions or comments on those items in that table? Well, if you're happy, I'll put that. So number 3, those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, that is carried. Number 4, agrees to deviate from the revenue and financing policy and allocate $336,000 from the Whitestone Contract Limited dividend to separate rate accounts. So what we talked about before. Any comment on that? I'll put that. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, that is carried. Number 5, pursuant to Section 95 2A of the Local Government Act 2002, agrees that the proposed annual plan does not include significant or material differences to Year 3 of the 2018-28 long-term plan.
Point of order, Major, a very, very minor matter, but to be consistent with 7 and 9, annual and plan should be Cap A and Cap B.
Thank goodness. Yes, noted. Councillor Hope, any comment on that?
Yeah, it's one of the questions that was raised by Audit New Zealand, probably with all councils, was making sure that they did do an assessment against their significance engagement policy in terms of the kinds of changes they were contemplating. And we did that. And by the significant engagement policy is due for review as part of the long-term plan, it was very much focused on service levels and expenditure rather than how they were funded. So as this plan is designed to deliver the service levels that were anticipated and really at reasonably similar costs, changed assumptions that brought those far closer into line than the LTP, it passed that, really passed that significance. It didn't pass the significance test. So we just wanted to make that clear in the resolution.
Councillor Wallstein?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kirchard. Yeah, just thanks for raising that, Mr. Hope, because I know on page 56, you talk about the council's significance and engagement policy, where you say the policy is silent on the consideration of a reduction in revenue. So it was all about expenditure. It wasn't about revenue. So surely it should cover both sides of the equation. Money coming in and money going out. So an important part of the review, upcoming review, I assume.
Great. Yes, I will do that as part of the long-term plan process. That'll probably be one of the first policies that we review and bring to meet members.
Thank you.
It's not so much for changing now, but just raising that when we don't trigger the significance policy, I guess you're saying that we don't need to go out to the community and consult on a change of what we were doing, essentially. The only, I guess, concern I have around that is we've got some people that know the system when it comes to council and we've taken their submissions, which are informed submissions, into account through this, which I don't think at this stage we do any differently, but I think we need to think about that for the future, because if we're not going to look for submissions, everyone needs to be on a level playing field. Otherwise, it just becomes those that are very engaged in the system that know how to get, their wants or wishes across the line, and the rest of the community don't actually have that opportunity. So I guess I agree with where we're going to, and I also think we've got some really good feedback from some people that it's good to get inclined, but I think looking at it in the future, I think we need to look at how fair that may be.
And on that point, I did consider whether we discussed it as a group that we didn't take into account those informal submissions, but because we brought it to the meeting room and it was discussed, it's ended up here for.
And I always think that interaction from our community, we should, where possible, talk about it and take it into account, because just want to make that point for the future.
Yeah, I think that is important. And again, it comes to the significance, I guess, of what's being asked for. In some cases, it was things that we already had in there, sport target, for example. But it is a good point, and it's probably particularly sensitive issue because we didn't consult last year, and so this is the second year we haven't done that. We will do a very thorough consultation with the long-term plan in this coming year, and just because of the whole effects of the pandemic, it's meant that our staff have been able to get on and do some of the other work that's really needing to be done. So it is extraordinary times, and hopefully we will get back into a more normal situation in this coming year, and there'll be plenty of opportunity for people to express their vision and their goals for their themselves or their organisations, and they'll be able to submit to us accordingly. It's a good point. Any other comments on the slide?
Can I just ask a question? Are we going to formally resolve anything with regard to those informal submissions? Will we have a sort of portmanteau resolution on the 30th? I take it the submissions you talk about are that page at the back of this report.
Attachment 1.
So is there anything in there that you believe we should specifically respond to? And if so, there's nothing on the books today, is there?
So there was, at a previous workshop, there was 3 issues were raised. There was the Sport Otago funding, there was the changed alignment of the open street cul-de-sac, and there was the Puketapu 25,000 that you questioned in terms of the feasibility study. So officers have responded with the extra information into the table, and so you can discuss that today. And in terms of directions for us officers for the 30th of June report, we would prefer to get that today.
Okay. Can I just ask then, if I missed anything, have we amended the amount of money we are paying to Sport Otago in the light of this $200 million government grant for sporting entities?
We have retained the same funding for Sport Otago in this annual plan, plus a minor adjustment for inflation. There was no instruction to make any other change.
The other funding, we need to find out what the criteria is and whether they've received anything. But I think a lot of it was to help make up shortfalls. Sporting trusts often rely on gambling funds, and gambling is well down, a bad thing generally. But it certainly affects income. There's been no one feeding pokies, etc. over the lockdown period, and so not a bad thing. But the ones that the organisations reliant on such funding do need to be topped up, so to speak, and I think that's gone to that. Any other questions? Okay, we've got number 5. Those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Those against. That is carried. So move on to number 6, and Councillor Hopkins, you've indicated a potential
Very quickly,
amendment to the wording.
if we look at page 55, it quotes the Act in relation to unbalanced budgets. It talks about section 100, 101, 1 and 2. It talks about how the Act says we have to manage our revenues, etc., prudently and in a way that promotes the current and future needs of the community, which is what the wording of the Act that Paul was talking about, the well-being. And I would like to add those words to 6, so that it reads, and although it is considered to be financially prudent and promoting the current and future needs of the community, this will not be a balanced budget. So nothing else changes, but I'm suggesting the adding of the words from the Act and promoting the current and future needs of the community.
Okay. Yep, it doesn't change the meaning. Secondary. Oh. You happy with that slight change?
Yes.
Addition, clarification.
Thank you, Anna.
Probably more clarification than anything. Okay, any further discussion on that? I shall put that. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, that is carried. Okay, number 7, agrees any final changes to the draft 2020-21 annual plan in advance of its adoption on the 30th of June. So, what changes are we referring to? Ones that were presented here, or anything else that we want to bring up now? Forever hold that piece.
Pretty much.
Okay.
So which change, so yeah.
Mr. Siddle.
So, Mayor Kirk, at this point, apart from the changes in the table in the report, we could probably discuss the extra information that came in as part of attachment 1. So there's no financial consequences on the open street cul-de-sac, of course, but if elected members wish to do something in the funding area for Puketapu track, that will need to be discussed. Plus just confirming the Sport Otago information.
Sorry, what page is that?
So that's that's the attachment.
Sorry, page?
59, 60.
Thank you.
Could I just make a comment on that?
Sorry, Councillor Holding.
Yeah, but the attachment, I actually struggled to read the extra information on. That's not very clear.
Yeah, it didn't translate too well, so online version.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Even I'm struggling as I try and zoom in.
Councillor Townsend.
Just around things like the Tapu walkway, which I think is a great opportunity. But do you think there may be a portion of external funding that may be available from the likes of community trust or such like, that maybe we could meet or match them with? So it might be a place in the middle there where for feasibility we put in half so that we can get funding from elsewhere outside of ratepayers as well to match it. I think that might be a nice compromise to keep it still moving forward.
Well, certainly the extra information that Mr. Van Speck has put in, he's suggesting that application to other parties such as the Otago Community Trust are considered.
Like maybe it's something that we earmark half of the cost of the feasibility at this stage to give the project an opportunity to get forward. I'm interested in Councillor Newton's take on that.
Yeah, I quite well agree with you, Councillor Tavendale, in that I believe the funding could be sourced elsewhere, the community trust, and or potentially co-funded by council that were deemed necessary. I think that to support community development and tourism, this is something that has been in the pipeline for quite a long time for the people of Waihemo. We're not necessarily a tourist destination, but it's a well-used and respected area that is used by a lot of the public and tourists. So I certainly see the benefits in doing it long term, and if we can, of course, move down that track, I think ratepayers would be quite appreciative.
Track, is it maybe?
Up the track.
I guess maybe the support and stimulus funds that we're going to be discussing later may also be a placeholder for something like that here, that whether it's the community board comes to council on it or something.
Just clarification, is this included in budgets or it's sitting outside of them?
It's not included in the budgets.
I just make the point, this can be worked on and agreed at any time. The Waihemo Community Board has delegation over the award rate, and there's quite a reasonable balance in that. And obviously we've got the RMA reserves that we would potentially and probably should put in as well to contribute towards this, but it gives time to actually look at other funding sources and then sort out how much do we need to allocate ourselves and work with the community board. We also need to have good consultation with iwi on this particular one before we talk to the Wairaki Runaka as well as we go through any process, which stuff we're very aware of. So it can sit here at the moment for, but with further action being requested, so we can see how we go. Councillor Gravy, was this on this one?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Look, there are some trusts that don't fund feasibility studies, and so it would be better to look at perhaps one board to look at their rating area as to terms of fundings on that. Other trusts will fund the actual track itself, and so just be conscious of that. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you, Councillor Wolseley.
Yeah, just you covered part of my point, shouldn't be occurred to, but in terms of the local iwi, I assume they are supportive of the walking track being established on the Tapu Hill, but would they be prepared to be a funding partner? You should mention some consultation with the iwi. Are they prepared to both support in terms of all matters, financially as well as the existence of the track?
I would imagine it depends on whether it reflects their their goals and aspirations.
Exactly, yes.
Or not. It's certainly a discussion we can have. I don't know that we necessarily need to ask you, but
If the topic would be benefited by a full discussion.
yes, certainly. Indeed. When I say we don't need to ask them, we've got access to sufficient funding to get feasibility underway, and I think that's one of the key things there. Once we know we'll have a better idea of what the full cost will be, that will be the bigger task, and maybe a bit of an uphill battle on that one. Councillor Hopkins and then Councillor Newton.
Look, just to clarify, am I hearing that the consensus around the table is that there are other funding sources available? There's support stimulus fund, RMA, the amenity rate and award itself, and that we are not proposing this morning to add 25,000 or any part thereof to the budgets. Correct. Thank you.
Yes, I was thinking, I was just wondering if the $25,000 figure is a nominal figure to be plucked out of the air, or has been researched.
Jorgensen?
It's a little bit nominal, but based on similar studies, it's probably what is required to have a decent crack at understanding what the project is. Any lease amount is probably going to give less confidence about what the outcome is.
You can see how consultants get yachts.
Councillor Holding.
I just see there's a proposal for a multi-purpose walkway Argown Road to the top of Eden Street, which I think this isn't the first time it's been presented for an annual plan. Do we have plans to be reconsidering the cycle strategy document with the long-term plan process?
Probably me again. Yeah, the walking and cycling strategy hasn't been reviewed for quite some time. Would you like me to stand up? It hasn't been reviewed for quite some time, and it's due for a refresh. That route is actually in the strategy, and it's really a funding issue but I know there is quite a bit of interest in the community to progress that route.
Okay, I think we've probably got the options sorted, better identified, and we actually aren't going to be adding this into the budget, so we don't need to go into more detail on this one at the moment. We'll probably get back onto the plan.
We potentially add something at the end of that one.
I'm absolutely happy to take a motion on this topic at the end, so we can send that signal to officers and or to Waihima Board and people in Palmerston. So what other things should we be looking at in the councillors? Any other discussion on items?
So the only other questions that elected members had from previous meetings or workshops was the funding given to Sport Otago. So that's actually highlighted in red, so hopefully we can read that. I can read it out. They are saying they get Otago Community Trust funding of 25,000, Lion Foundation funding of 28,000, in brackets at risk due to the COVID-19 impact on Class 4 gambling. Network Waitaki sponsorship of 4,000. They have to apply for that, and that application has been lodged. And then they mentioned Waitaki District Council annual plan grant of 40,025. So we were just to confirm the amount that Sport Otago received from Waitaki District Council.
Councillor Newton.
I do have one other question in relation to the water, Waihima Ward, wherein it's.
Do you mind if we come back to them? Yeah, so we'll just cover off the Sport Otago. So this is funding the Sport Waitaki position and the work that it does. And obviously we have the different sporting codes, development officers that come up, which go to our schools and various work that they do. Councillor Hopkins.
Are we sort of inflation adjusting this on an annual basis? Because I think you remember back in the day, it was about 30,000 that we, and then I think it nudged up under Clutter's reign to 35.
Yes.
And now I see it 41.95. So it must be just inflation adjusted on an annual basis, is it?
It's inflation adjusted, and Originally it started off at $25,000 each for 3 different parties, and it's the others haven't stuck in there in quite the same way, or they haven't increased. We have inflation increased, which I think it's certainly given value over the years, and we don't inflation increase, then we have to run. Basically, they have to run the service on on a finer financing, and then the position gets cut, and it doesn't end up achieving what it's supposed to achieve. Right. Any other comments on that? Councillor Newton, is your water one?
Yes, sorry. In relation to the water for the Waihemo area, it's stipulated that the grant funding has been applied for the shovel-ready projects, and I'm just wondering if there's been any furtherance of that and notifications by government in any context. Timeframes.
Mr. Jorgensen, can you?
No, we've received no further update from the government on our shovel-ready projects. May have noted that the government did announce 11 major projects received some funding today, but alas, we were not one of them.
We need a harbour bridge, that's what we need, Mr. Jorgensen.
We're building a clip-on for the 7th Street, to the 10th Street bridge. Okay, any other comments on? Okay, so if we go back to page 50 and to item 7. So basically no changes. What's agreed?
Chair, could I make a suggestion? There's no reason why we couldn't take 7, 8 and 9 together, surely. So,
you're your speed reader, way ahead of us. No, I think if people are happy, we definitely can take it together. Mr. Hope, your comment?
So 8 will need to be 2, 3, and 4. So we just need to.
Right. Okay, so just a change to that, but let's do it now. Do you have a hand up? Nope. Okay. Right, we'll put number 7 through 9. Yep, sorry. Just getting things in focus. So we'll put those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Those against, that is carried. Number 10, instructs officers to prepare a resolution to set the rates for 2021 year with arrears penalties set at 10% and instalment penalties set at a reduced rate of 5%. So any comment on that, Mr. Hope?
Yeah, we sort of laid out in the paper, traditionally, council has imposed the maximum penalty possible. It is a maximum, you can vary it as you wish. The idea of the maintaining the arrears penalty at the 10% mark was essentially because it is a significant income stream. There was very little growth in the arrears at instalment 4. So these issues were non-COVID related. The logic was that we should continue to impose the penalty to help get these paid, but recognising in the tone of the whole document that the next year could be challenging, that a lower instalment penalty amount may be appropriate, and that would really be in conjunction with some of the other measures that have already been agreed. So it's just a suggestion. It does have an impact, but it's one that can be lived with.
So if anyone finds themselves in difficulties, they can apply for a postponement and other measures so that they're not necessarily getting that 10% penalty straight off. Councillor Hopkins?
Yes, the only question I had, I suppose, was whether, I'm thanking you for the detail we went into with the report, and the rationale for coming to this conclusion. Could we waive instalment penalties altogether for, say, the one instalment, say the first of the next year, or something of that sort? It's a kind of acknowledgement of the impact last 3 months have had?
I'd need to check that before the resolution. I think it would be, would assume it would be possible to have penalties per instalment, as long as it was detailed in the rates resolution. So you could set it at 0 for instalment 1 and, well, at different rates for the different instalments.
What would your view be about that?
I think that would be unnecessarily complicated, and that you've put in a lot of other measures to assist people that really need it. That would rather deal with some of those issues on a case-by-case basis rather than, you know, a very much a blanket approach. As we saw with instalment 4, people took advantage of it that appeared to have no reason why they shouldn't be paying on time.
I think the main thing is to have really good communications around this to the community, saying if you are in difficulty, get in touch with our team and they will sort out a solution for them. So I'm going to put number 10. Those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against? It's carried. Thank you very much. And thank you, the team, for that work. Thanks, Timdale.
I'd like to move to the first one being that council instructs officers to work with the Waihima Community Board on options for a feasibility study for the Tapu walking track, Tapu walking track.
Yes, you're a seconder for that. I think it's straightforward enough. Put that, those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And the second one?
The second one was council instructs officers to bring the cycle strategy document to council for discussion prior to long-term plan deliberation.
Okay. Is that going to be feasible? Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, absolutely, we can do that. The only thing I'll just caution on is that the setting those priorities as individual targets may mean other unintended consequences bodies may need to get justice around. So that's the only caution. However, we can certainly do that.
I'm happy with feedback on that. Really what I'm trying to get to is I want us to discuss the RGA program that has come up numerous times, and I think it's worthy of discussion and put here that it needs to be considered as part of cycle strategy. So I'm trying to put it in the right.
Can I suggest a slight change to that we request a report to the next council meeting on the impacts of bringing that forward? Would that be?
That's not a slight change. That's an alternative motion.
No, it's not. I mean, we don't, you know, we've been criticised in the past amongst ourselves of bringing things forward that actually we don't understand the impacts of. And what we're saying is there's impacts on this one. And so bringing it forward without actual advice on the impacts is not that prudent necessarily. So how you know, it needs to be addressed, and it's trying to find the best way of doing it.
I guess if I can ask officers for a bit of guidance on what the best way to have us through the long-term plan discuss the Argyan Road possibility of
Just comment on that, the Argyan track is already in the walking cycling strategy, so it shouldn't be a big deal for review. It's actually probably more a funding discussion. Yeah, it shouldn't be a big job, if you like, to bring that forward. It's actually already there. It's just a matter of allocating funding to it. So it's probably a prioritising discussion more than a full review. However, we have signalled that we would like to do a review of the walking cycling strategy to make sure the priorities are approved in it. So it may not be too much work, And it's just a matter of us looking at that and then bring that forward when it's ready.
Okay, we need to take a break now, so we're going to leave it at that. Officers will come back to us and with the discussion, not necessarily a council meeting, we can do it in briefing workshop. So we'll have a break now for 15 minutes and we'll be back at 10:30. Thank you very much.
whomsoever chooses to stop for, should be told. to
I'd stop for you, Jim.
Well told.
I thought you would. Not
Yes.
you, not you.
Okay, it's 10:29. Thank you.
And I'd stop for you too, sir.
It's now 12:30. We are live again, Mr. Chair.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get back underway, and we're going to move ahead in the agenda to item 7.2, the Zone Committee's annual report. Welcome to the Council Chamber, Bruce Murphy, Peter Burtz, Dave Moore and Richard Suttle. So welcome, gentlemen. And how do you want to do this? Do one of the zones? Who's going first? Upper Waitaki?
He picked me. Can I come?
Absolutely.
Take a seat, Richard. Thank you very much.
I've never done this before. Just to introduce myself, I'm Richard Subtill, a community committee member of the Upper Waitaki Zone Committee, and I'd like to make this a question and answer thing. I don't know, to be honest, I don't know what your level of expertise is around what we do and also some of the language we use, because we tend to get into spaghetti soup of initials that has most of the people reaching for a dictionary. So stop me at any stage if you like. Obviously, our issue is to protect the water quality, and very basically the TLI, the Trophic Limit Indicator of Lake Benmore, is our founding document. So currently the lake is in very good health, and when the community consultation was done a long time ago, the line in the sand was that would not change. So all the activities, whether they be agriculture, aquaculture, tourism, whatever, are linked to, essentially to simplify things, are linked to the TLI of Lake Benmore. And there has been seasonal fluctuations and now fluctuations linked possibly to nutrient. And so the biggest challenge to the Zone Committee is to manage those inputs into the lake. And just to give you a little bit of background really quickly, the Holden arm of Lake Benmore is big and the water flows straight in there and straight out, so that's not a problem. The Ahuriri arm of Lake Benmore is constricted, if you've been down there boating, by the gorge, and because of the dam being introduced, it now means that there isn't a flushing effect going through there. So the flow into there is relatively slow, and essentially it's a big settling pond now because it doesn't get that flushing effect that it used to get. So I think that our committee is actually very functional. We have a lot of mutual respect and things that I gather that we work pretty well as a group. Representing farmers, probably one of the biggest frustrations we have actually, although there's a lot of emotion and rightly so about our environment, it's actually quite hard to get people representing some of the more recreational areas, etc., to be on the committee. So that is difficult, frustrating. The other thing that makes life relatively challenging for us, and I'm going to pass it around, I'll give it as an example, is that over time, the consenting disciplines and various levels of output input have varied massively, so that there is no consistency. So we have farmers who neighbour each other, where one has a quarter of the NDA, which is nutrient discharge allowance, per hectare per year compared to the neighbour over the fence, and people's consent terms are different. So it makes it incredibly hard to get consistency across the field. As a committee, we've actually been pushing for ECAN to be more aggressive about enforcement of the controls where they exist, but I'm going to happy to pass around. This is one example. So this is the TLI triggers for various properties and Doc and the other landowner in the area. And that kaleidoscope of colours there is all the different levels at which people in our area are measured for the TLI. Well, the TLI is supposed to be one number that represents everybody, and that's that's the range of colours. So it's incredibly challenging to try and get consistency across the board.
Councillor Tabdo, question?
Is that essentially a hangover from older consents versus new legislation and rules?
The hangover implies that we had some fun in the first place and then we had the after effects. That hasn't been the case yet, but yeah, it is. I mean, I'm speaking as an individual who can express their opinion, and I've never been afraid to do it. The science and the impacts have been a moving feast, and ECAN has always been, possibly other council strugglers, has always been catching up with the facts. And so if you stacked enough money and enough pseudoscience to back up your opinion, you could take a bigger slice of the pie. And the irony is that irrigation, I think, was always meant in our area to be something that would round out these quite often drought affected properties. So there would be a little bit scattered around everywhere, whereas in fact, money talks. And so we've got pockets of concentration, and that is something that I don't know when that's going to change. I don't know, probably if the ECAN reps are listening or looking, they'll be going, oh God, Richard, shut up. But I mean, I was asked to come here and represent what the situation is. The zone committee, I think, is a really good functioning body, but the biggest struggle we have is to try and get consistency when people have, as I said, diametrically conflicting consent conditions and different timelines, and et cetera, et cetera.
Just one other question on your report on the Lake Middleton, and it's a comment in there saying it's generally state performing. What does that mean?
The times that there's been another issue just around Ruataniwha, same sort of thing. When we have lots and lots of people camping there, regrettably, people do what people will do. And there was a spike just near to the rowing camp in Ruataniwha, same sort of thing. A horrific spike, a bad spike after Christmas, New Year. Hello. And Lake Middleton is a very small body of water with a very narrow outlet back into Lake Ohau. So the water quality on the other side of the road is completely different. But if you put enough people with their kids and dogs and everything in a small space for a condensed period of time, unfortunately, people are the problem in those scenarios. And we've got a communication program coming up which is going to put it back on people. This is not somebody else's issue. This is quite simply and crudely, don't piss end in and around the lake. Yeah, thanks, boss. Technical term. So I love your lakes.
Don't do number 1 or 2. In the lake, thank you.
Councillor Hopkins, Trish, thank you.
But everybody else assumes that their tiny contributions don't make any difference, but get enough people it does. So the Love Your Lakes campaign that the communications people from ECAN have put together, I think raised awareness, but we're still talking about, I'm on holiday, this is, it's not me that's making a difference. I'm not going to be here in those scenarios. The campaigns are definitely continuing, and we are going to be a little bit less polite. We're going to move towards, I think, on the building sites, you get the sort of the little kitchen type finger pointing at someone saying, you are the safety issue on this site. We're looking to do something similar where it's not somebody else's problem, it's you, because you're here. And the toilets are over there. Make sure that we go and use them. But that sort of thing is happening around the area with all the campsites, and that is an issue that comes to us a lot.
Either lakes or else. Councillor Wolstein and Councillor Millway.
Yeah, thank you, Richard, for coming to see it and address us and give us your knowledge. I haven't ever had a chance to study your map, but with the different colours there, do those colours relate to areas of land which has been developed in the basin as opposed to land which is still in its natural state, or is there other reasons why there are different runoff of nutrients in different areas?
It would take all of the time, and I'm sure my colleague behind would be quite happy with that. But
yeah.
I mean, the big green bits, for simplicity, are dock, and then the others are property boundaries where their consents are structured subtly different to each other.
Oh, okay.
Right. Okay. And as I say, it's free to pass around if you want to have a look. I don't think it'll mean anything. I think hopefully it will illustrate though just the range of consenting conditions for one topic, and that's.
Can I just follow up on that? Is there any movement by ECAN to try and regularise those, make them more equal, or are they always going to be at a?
No, well, I spoke foolishly, enthusiastically there. We're trying to tuck the edges in, but to be quite honest, quite often it's a case of learning things on the fly, because you almost need the consultants here, because they are the ones who know everything. And realistically, the resources that ECAN have to get the full picture, I've been doing this for a while now, and it never ceases to amaze me actually how little we know.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Thank you.
Just going back to the effluent overflow to the lake. I was at Ruataniwha camping ground when all this happened last year. So people ended up very, very ill, but we were under the understanding that it was actually the septic systems in the camping ground that couldn't cope with the effluent.
And I think that this is a good example where people just say things. I feel quite sorry for the campground owners. They have been put through the absolute ringer, and it has been proved to beyond a shadow of doubt. There's a very expensive report that was generated that it is nothing to do with their system. And I think it's just that a commercial entity gets blamed. The people themselves, that wasn't me, and it's been proved, well, we had that report presented to us recently, and is unequivocally just lots and lots of people. And I could list the disgusting things that happen in behind sheds and whatever. So no, I think, I've got no interest in the campground at all. Yeah, I've got no interest in the campground whatsoever, but they have been accused of all kinds of things being disproved, and of course no one wants to hear that.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins.
Yes, couple of questions, just to clarify. Did I hear you correctly? That map doesn't show trophic levels. What it shows is consent variations. Am I correct?
It shows levels at which various consents would have, it would have impacts on consents. If the trophic TLI of the lake gets to 2.75 or 2.9, or shades of the same.
But I think the point I'm trying to make is that the colours indicate that people have got complying with differing sets of rules, not necessarily exceeding or contributing to the problem. I mean, you can't determine a trophic level from this. You can only determine the consent condition.
Yeah. So the point is that it's just that whilst everybody's doing essentially the same thing, the rules that they play by vary.
Just look very quickly, having just got elected or appointed to the lower Waitaki one, and heard ever since I've been appointed that there's no money to do anything. Who provides the immediate steps funding that you've been using of $100,000? And does that include the 73,000 you've spent on the Dobson and Hopkins Valley weed control?
Yep. So the answer to that is the money comes from ECAN. It was part of the original structure of the zone committees that they would have funding for immediate steps. That has been, I think, one of the success stories where members of the community, landowners of whatever type, can apply to the committee as long as they meet the criteria, and there is obviously close supervision of what the criteria is. So you can't go outside of that. Then if it's good for the environment, then it can be funded in part. And there's obviously with fencing waterways or plantings or whatever, the landowner has to make a significant contribution to get hold of the other money.
So the 73,000 is not additional to that, it's part of it.
It's part of it.
Thank you. No, thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard. It's really good to see that Hopkins is getting some weed control. I
always control my weed.
Can I just ask you, seriously now? Obviously, we have a lot to do with ECAN, and we've got on the Mural Forum with them. We have this joint committee that you're on, and the other joint committee, Lower Waitaki. What can we do to help the Upper Waitaki Zone Committee?
What can you do? I mean, I think it's important that we have all the input from Ross and that he brings the message back, because quite often we feel that, rightly or wrongly, we are the far-flung corner of the empire, and the population voter base is down here, which is just life. I think the zone committee structure in general has been very beneficial for, and the quality of the relationship and the understanding between people in the community and ECAN has definitely been enhanced by the zone committee structure. And I think we should raise a toast as we get our hangover to Dame Margaret, because it was one of her things that she put together. But it's a work in progress, and we're governed by legislation that is not within anybody's ability to change. If you could turn the clock back and come up with a consistent approach to these things, happy days. I wouldn't be spending my morning down here, but can't. So we've got to. There has to be a scenario now where, having had so much variation, we get back to a consistent approach. But wow, we're going to be. Jim's going to be a lot greyer by the time we get that done. So in the meantime, we just have to work together.
I'd love to recommend.
No, certainly, we absolutely support the work the zone committee is doing. And if there are things that we can do more directly, we can happy to hear those things. Appreciate the work that you're doing and the other community members and Councillor Rovey on that as well. So just let us know, how things are going. It is an important part of our district. It's 60% of our district is the Artery ward, and it's some of the most spectacular scenery we have, and some of the most important ecological areas that we have. So definitely want to make sure that we're doing our part, looking after it. And we're working on our district plan review, and that has further measures in that as well. So look forward to getting good feedback. The zone committee's able to submit on that in due course when that review goes out. But thank you very much. We'll pass on to the Lower Waitaki Zone Committee. But Richard, thank you for your presence here today and for coming down the valley. Right, welcome Bruce and Dave. Good to have you back, Dave. And Bruce, how long have you been chair?
6 months.
Right.
Yeah.
So thanks for stepping into that role.
So kia ora, everyone. And I think, Richard, that was fantastic. It's a real view of the passion that sits in your zone committee room. And when people speak, they speak with a bit with heart and knowledge as well. And I guess if I go back and have a look at our zone, we're really governed by the Wainono Lagoon and the TLI that's in that area, and that's a massive focus for our committee and community on how that moves going forward, particularly around the augmentation of that lagoon now that Hunter Downs has been put on the shelf for a while. So that's a really big thing our community needs to work through. But it is a real focus for our whole committee on water quality, because we do sort of feel that we get a little bit tied up in water quantity at times, and they're not the two same things. So water efficiency sometimes overtakes the argument of water quality, and we spend a lot of time just discussing and bringing these what we do as a zone committee back to actual effect on ground. I think we've spent a lot of time over the last year just trying to work out how we encompass our community. After Plan Change 3 and Plan Change 5 both landed, which affect our area, effectively there was quite a big void where most of your community that was fairly engaged in that process actually just sat back and waited perhaps for ECAN to pick up that ball and get the engagement part underway. But as a zone committee, I think we've realised we probably need to be really driving that pretty hard as well, which is not an easy task. But our answer really is to work with the catchment group model that we have at Wainono and also Northland, and perhaps elevate that right through our district. So every catchment has some representation, and we can discuss issues that affect them, because they are very much like the TLI map that Richard passed around. They're all different. And I think two other things I'd just like to say is it's a fantastic forum where you actually have iwi community members on the farm, our farming representative all around the room, and discuss an issue, so you get a wide breadth of discussion. And in our case, the iwi representation is very strong, so you get a really good flavour of what they think about the water quality issues that affect them. And I think the big challenge that we have in front of us, obviously, and we're not too sure because it's just landing now, is your essential freshwater and what that looks like. It looks like it could affect our community quite considerably. So when you asked Richard what you can perhaps do to support his committee, I think ECAN has handled the collaborative process quite differently to what ORC has. So when you perhaps are trying to understand how essential freshwater affects this group and its community, as you perhaps flavour it slightly different for ECAN, because I'm a big believer in the collaborative process we've gone through here. We've been 10 years on these really tough community discussions, and I'd really like to think that we could sort of protect that as we go through and not have it overlaid in and Wellington and all end up in the same boat. So perhaps when you go through those discussions, if you perhaps have a bit of a think about that a little bit differently from RRC on behalf of ECAN, that would be good. So that's all I really wanted to say, I suppose. Just one other comment, I suppose, in relation to Richard's comments around different consents and how they've been handled. We obviously have two pretty contentious ones in our area around Oceania and perhaps the river removal or shingle removal in the Hakataramia. So it's probably a really good example of consents are issued differently, sometimes different between boundary fences and farming types can be the same. So, you know, these are big things that we need to, as a committee and as a community, understand how that all works out and how you actually unscramble that and give one clear message to everyone that this is the right thing to do around your work quality. So, with that, I'd just like to open up for any questions from the report, please.
Yeah, no, we certainly live between those two worlds of ECAN and ORC. We always encourage them to make sure they're talking to each other and we don't end up having it being split with different rules for different parts of our district. But they have gone down different approaches over this last 10 years, and the zone committee, I think, zone committees have proven their worth in the Environment Canterbury area. So it's certainly given communities a different voice to what they have in the ORC area. So they both have very important jobs, of course, and certainly mindful of that and trying to find the right balance between sure everything's still working and both ecologically and also economically challenges. So thank you for that. Questions, councillors? Just acknowledge Councillor Hopkins for his work that he's now doing on that committee as well. Mr. Suttle.
Just one last thing, the multi-agency alignment program, which has been talked about forever. We have yet to see any progress in that whatsoever. That might be that we're just ill-informed, we're listening to cost or whatever, but it's been frustrating that there was quite a sort of hoopla launch probably about 3 years ago, off the top of my head at Tekmo, and progress is glacial if it's been moved at all. Just an observation. It's not a criticism of you guys, it's just we consent holders of whatever type operate, with the purview of LINs, ECAN, etc., etc., etc. And they said they would get together and work collaboratively.
You're not seeing that yet. Just ask Mr. Power. Did he make any comment on that?
Yes, the Mackenzie Basin Alignment Program is, as you know, an alignment program involving 5 chief executives of LINs, McKenzie, ECAN, and ourselves, aimed at providing greater consistency and making consent applications easier for to landowners, etc., and bring about an improved environmental result for the area. It's the first time that this has been attempted in New Zealand, so it's an imperfect, an imperfect thing, but still very, very worthy of progression. And while it might not appear that there's been a great deal of progress, there is quite a lot of alignment amongst those agencies now. There will be obviously a lot more work to be done still, but things have definitely moved on over the last few years. But we'd be very interested in further feedback on that and where we can do better.
I look forward to seeing and hearing that. We've had the open invitation to leaders to attend our zone committee to help us with some pieces, and to date, they've always unfortunately unable to attend at the last minute. We refer euphemistically, because we had done the humour as well, the wrong ones, as the invisible man. So I hope I'm wrong, but if you want feedback about how it's going or how it's perceived, it's further work in terms of communication at least.
Yeah, well, I can certainly pass on those observations. Yeah.
Would it be helpful if Mr. Power could arrange as many of those 5 CEs to potentially come to a zone meeting?
I mean, I don't feel the need to get people to turn up. If we had a representative who could show us where progress is being made and how it can help us to do what we do, because that's what we're all trying to achieve, that would be great. It's not a no one comes to see us thing. It's simply we haven't seen any progress. If we saw progress, we wouldn't want to see people.
I think it's just that opportunity potentially to have that two-way discussion about actually we need to see more of this, and maybe just ask Mr. Power to consider even himself and the CE of Mackenzie possibly going to one of the zone meetings, which are usually in Twizel. So we can talk about that.
We'd be happy to see that.
Yep. So definitely be good. Mr. Burt.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting us here. I'm the zone lead for Lower Waitaki, and I'm a bit of a mixture in terms of my position in regional council. They're still trying to get a hold on who I am and what I'm about, because I'm also a district councillor for TDC. So you can imagine some of the subtle things around that. So in terms of that, the alliance and what's happening from an ECAN perspective, certainly in the space around compliance, it's been a long time trying to get that compliance aspect and get everyone across that in that environment. We've just appointed someone in the role specifically from an ECAN perspective, but we are now having significant talks with pulling all those people together. And it has been Glasgow, I understand, to actually look at where that's going to land and what that person's going to look like and what are the expectations of each of those organisations, and pull them together. And there's quite a bit of work that has been done, and it's hopefully we're trying to land that very, very quickly, because there's a lot of things happening in that, across that area that really need a lot of attention. So it's another resource that we need to underpin what we're doing there now, and ECAN's leading that.
Thank you. And Bruce, yeah, it was good for Mr. Power and myself to join Lower Waitaki pre-Christmas. Yeah. Another lifetime ago, and get to meet some of the people involved. And I think it is important to actually have a good understanding of the relationships and who's who and these different entities. So yeah, we definitely appreciate the work that's going into this. There's a lot of time by a lot of people to make good things happen, and it's certainly good to see that community-led progress being made. Councillor Nugent, question?
Yes, I'm just wondering about the consent types that have been provided, and wondering whether, or what your thoughts are on the are the issues around the different consent types due to a perceived failure of the Resource Management Act, by looking at the individual application versus the whole area.
I guess if we look back now, from the landscape, we probably are looking at it from a catchment basis and looking historically, these consents are issued, you would say individually probably the cause a greater sum of effect, I suppose. And of course, they're all rolling out for various activities at various times, so when they get called back in, that's when we dealt with. So it is complex, and it's the RMA law of that day as well. And to Richard's point, how smart some people are around their application and how they do it. So.
I mean, it's been open to interpretation issues. So I guess you have to blame the legislation because it clearly hasn't worked. But that's above my pay grade. But the reality has been that if you stack up enough money at experts, you'll wear it down and get what you want, whether it's what the situation needs.
Appreciate that. Okay, we just need to wrap this up. But Councillor Hopkins, you have a quick.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, on what basis do you say it hasn't worked? I mean, the reports we've had.
That is a few hours to go. I think we will go into that one.
Except that the lake quality has been improving. The last two reports have indicated that. So I just flagged that overall comment. That should be some grounds for some optimism, I would argue.
So that's two issues. There's the really big one to start with. The lake one is the only one that I can talk to, and it is front and centre of what we do at the zone committee, and I'm happy to answer questions on that. But we've also seen in the past that weather conditions have a massive amount of effect in those quality criteria. So we shouldn't be complacent because it's improving, because we could get different weather patterns that would make a change in the future.
Okay. Well, thank you very much to all of you for coming here to our council chamber and presenting the way you have and answering the questions. It's much appreciated, and as I've said already, very much appreciate the good work you are doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, and thank you, Jim, for taking the time to come and meetings as well.
I'll see you tomorrow, is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, councillors, just need someone to move. We're receiving information. Councillor Tavendale, Councillor Newton, second with that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. And against, it's carried. Thank you very much. Safe travels. Thank you. Okay, councillors, we now move back to 6.2 on page 61, which is the proposed membership of the local government funding agency community engagement plan. And welcome back, Mr. Hope. Right. Do you want to introduce Mr. Hope?
It will be a brief introduction.
Yes, brief is good. It's all good.
Just to follow up to a matter addressed at a prior council meeting in relation to joining the LFGA. We said we would present an engagement plan and document and supporting information, and that is the nature of this item. So it's a pretty straightforward consultation on a relatively technical issue. We're trying to get the public engaged, but I'm not bursting with optimism that it will get a great deal of response. And there was also a light update of the borrowing management and investment policy, and there will be a more comprehensive review as part of the build-up to the long-term plan. So I'm happy to answer questions.
Councillor Wallstein.
Well, I thank you, Mr. Hope. I don't have a question there, Kurt. I think it's been well covered by councillors at previous workshops. I'd just be happy to move the resolutions, recommendations.
Councillor Wallstein, you've moved that. Councillor McRovey seconded that. I'll just double check there aren't any other questions. No? Good.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Hopkins. Didn't know.
I'm sorry. I'm annoyed, and I want to ask Mr. Hope. I've looked at the consultation document. Is it our view that only people with university degrees have opinions that are worth listening to?
I don't believe so.
Then why have we written a consultation document in language appropriate for economic stage 1 or bureaucracy babble 101.
Councillor Hopkins, we can just dial it back a little bit. You've got the opportunity to discuss this. If you don't,
Okay, I'm sorry.
really
Okay,
asking a question. I think you're making a statement, to be very honest.
Well, I am, but if we want people to tell us what they think, I believe we owe them the courtesy of communicating in clear, simple, easy to understand, reader-friendly language. And this isn't any of those things in my view. And, you know, it's going out tomorrow. And it will, yes, of course we won't get it. I suspect we won't get feedback because the document is so alienating. Now, it's equally, it's a complex issue, but at its heart, a council that has been proud never to have borrowed externally for a long time is going to start to do so. And that may exercise some people in the community.
Look, I'm actually going to ask Councillor Tavendale to respond to that because I think it's something that, you know, the way it's been phrased, you know, I'm not overly happy with. You've made a particular point, that's fine. Just ask Councillor Tavendale to respond.
I guess it's two things. One is we've got to do the right tick box and make sure that we do as required by legislation and cover everything right. There is probably in the introduction, probably quite rude on that front page there, and there could be perhaps a bit that we pick out just to make it really simple at the start before they go into the complexities of what we're discussing. Might just make it a little bit more user friendly. But I think it's a good document and it covers all the things we need to do, and I don't want to see us asking a huge amount more time on that. But yeah, whether or not the introduction could just have a brief little bold what we're trying to achieve. But it is all in there and it is all relatively clear. I don't think that anyone has any risk of read or walk through this and understand it.
Well, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Hope, would you like to?
But yeah, I understand Councillor Hopkins' point. Unfortunately, this is a technical process. It is a statement of proposal. It's been drafted on the advice of people that have been through this process 20 odd times. This will not be the only communication that is sent out to the public in relation to this matter. This is the formal document we are engaging with. It does need to be relatively technical in its nature. There will be additional communication that will clarify the issue and I think put it in, attract people's attention and put it in a language that make it a little easier to engage with. But unfortunately, yeah, as I said when we talked about this item originally, it's going to be a technical consultation and unfortunately a bit limited about what we can put in and how we put it in. So I acknowledge the point, we'll try and address it by other ways. Yeah, this is the statement of proposal.
I think that is exactly the point. This is the more formal document. How we actually engage and the language we use in that engagement is the bit where it's going to be more plain speak. We're able to do that whilst pointing to the consultation document if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of the detail. So I'm comfortable with what's actually being proposed and with Councillor Tavendale's suggestion of just, you know, more direct, this is what we're trying to achieve, start, then that would just set the context even better. Councillor Walston.
Well, I was going to exercise my right to reply in future, so.
Okay, we're just better just check on it. Any other comments?
Sorry, I just have got a couple of other questions. There are one or two questions. Are we going to look at the policy today, or are we,
the intention of this report is we've covered it off, this topic quite considerably. We want to get it, if it goes out for consultation tomorrow. Yes. It's quite straightforward in many respects, and also in many respects it's very much technicality around the consultation. We need people, you know, we want people's feedback, but as Mr. Hope says, it actually stacked up, it makes a lot of sense. I don't think there's going to be too much opposition at all to what's being proposed. We may not get very many submissions at all, but people will have that opportunity. And we're also going to make sure that our communication to the community is clear, it's as concise as it can be, and it tells them what they need to know. So we're not actually here to go and do another panel meeting session. It's actually been past us a couple of times already.
Well, it hasn't. I mean, just very quickly, the policy that the liability management and investment policy has got a number of changes today in blue. Now, I'm perfectly happy to take any questions I might have up with Mr. Hope later. But at some point, if we're adopting a policy and there are questions to be asked about it, then we should have an opportunity to ask them.
Through you, I mean, there are two more opportunities because this is an engagement, including the policy. Okay, it's just a draft policy.
All right.
There will be a hearing of submissions, which will include any comments on the policy, and then an adoption of the proposal and the policy. So there's plenty of opportunities to provide.
Totally happy. Right, may I ask one other question, and it relates to the engagement approach. I see that our print advertising is proposed to be an advertisement in the notice board in the Oamaru Mail in June. And I wanted to ask whoever is responsible for this, it's probably Mr. Serval, whether he or they thought that a standalone advert rather than one in the council notice board would be more appropriate. I think it's a reasonably significant issue that should have its own.
Well, I think that's the point. It's actually not that significant. It's like, hey, here's an opportunity to save money. Do you want to do it? And, to put it in the simplest terms, as opposed to actually this is going to cost you a lot of money, ratepayer, what do you think? Which isn't the situation. Councillor Tavendale.
Just around the policies being able to be followed by people. I just note that communication team are quite good at making things quite accessible to people with Facebook posts and they do on user and things. So I'm sure there'll be a lot more explanation and probably make it a little bit more catchy and appealing to people to understand what we're doing. That will go around anyway. I think we've got evidence we need in front of us.
Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kircher. I'd like to thank Mr. Hope for his explanation and just his clarification that this is in fact a legal process we're going through. And I agree with you, Mayor Kircher, that it's not a major decision at all. I think from memory there are about 78 local authorities in New Zealand, and they're not of that 78, about 72 maybe, something like that are already members. I may be wrong on the number, but we're one of the, Waitaki is one of the few councils that's not a member of the local government funding authority. I think that does show that the local government funding authority, the LGFA, does work to the benefit of local bodies, and we should belong to it. We may never use it, but if we do want to use it, as a member, we are then able to do so. But we likely will need to use it because, as the report points out, council has invested money back in the local community, and we can't spend that money somewhere else. It's already been loaned for the benefit of the community. So, and I think to my mind, the report as written is quite clear. And I think if any ratepayer community member did have some difficulty understanding it, they are able to approach council staff and obtain more clarification. So the report is not the be all and end all. There is more information available for people if required. So that's the reason why I was keen to move it and get this process in motion.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to put the motion, which is as per the recommendations. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much, and thank you for the work that you're doing on this, Mr. Hope, and look forward to seeing what feedback is. Thank you. Okay, now move to 6.3, regulatory fees and charges on page 92. And Mrs. Guyan and so hand over to you.
So I've been asked to provide a report to consider fee exemptions for businesses affected by the result of COVID-19 lockdown. I'd just like to start by saying it's difficult for me to recommend a fee reduction when I'm responsible for achieving a certain specified recovery rate, and hence that is the rationale in my report. I am empathetic to the current economic situation, but that doesn't change what I'm here to deliver for council. So I've got Mr. Cook and Mr. Bartley with me. If you've got any specific questions about fees, I'll be more than happy to answer them, and I'll leave it for you.
Okay, Councillor Percival.
Yeah, through the chair, Michelle, or whoever wants to answer it, but on page 93 for background, you've got there have been requests for council to reduce or waive fees to support the economic recovery. Who has been requesting, and how many people or companies are you talking about? I mean, is there a major influx of people crying about it, or what?
We haven't specifically had a major influx. Sorry, folks, I'm looking at you. And the building industry are prepared for the fee increase that we've been signalling will commence on the 1st of July. We have had some individual requests to consider waiver of fees or deferral of fees. And in general, most of that feedback come into some councillors at a point in time, which resulted in this report being requested.
That's still not giving me an answer. In fact, numbers
I don't have the numbers.
can't, so therefore there hasn't been a major. The thing is, you're not meeting your cost recoveries, even with the increase in the price, which haven't been that substantial. And I mean, the IRD hasn't lowered my tax rate. The power company hasn't lowered my power charges. I mean, I can go on with many services that I get at home. Insurance companies haven't dropped their premiums, they've increased them. So, in all fairness, even though it'd be nice to be able to reduce fees for anybody and under any circumstances, I don't think it has any practicality. That's my opinion, and
Okay, good question. Councillor Hopkins, then Councillor.
Oh, no, I'll yield to Councillor Norman.
Hugh, I didn't think we were reducing fees. I thought we were preventing an increase. Sorry, that's what we've been through the last couple of times.
Previously, which are coming to force in July.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have answered.
But it was a wonderful answer.
Councillor Hopkins.
The Sheldon Roger, can I just look? I'm looking at the what we would lose if we did write things off. And if my maths are correct, that if we waived building fees for the sake of argument for a month, there would be about 65,000 rather than 392 for 6. What would your view be to say to doing as a stimulus initiative? 1 month, all building fees waived, or alternatively, you know how we talked about the fact that there was a disproportionately large percentage of the cost of jobs under 20,000 or 10,000 sucked it up by fees? What would you think about the idea of waiving them for a month with an idea to encouraging people to get in, get the consent, get the work, keep people in jobs and so on? What would your attitude be to that?
Yes, I would be keen to answer that. I would be quite concerned around the management of that because, as you know, we have 20 days to process a building consent application. We could be snowed under with work due to the incentive, and we would then have to contract it out. So it could potentially cost significantly more to meet the demand. We would also have to balance when we would charge for the inspections, because they could apply for a consent and then they have 2 years to activate that consent and complete the building work.
Yeah, but since you're proposing here, if I read this correctly, sorry, no, supplementary through you, Stu. The suggestion is, and I'm not comfortable with this, that we subsidise any write-off but using the support and stimulus fund. But if that's a notion that you guys are wanting to put up, what if we said, okay, what about the small jobs, a month cost holiday, and even if there was a contracting cost, would you accept the possibility of funding that through the SNS fund?
Our recommendation was that we use the existing economic development fund if we have building or resource consents where we consider they may be they may directly impact economic recovery, then council could consider that via our existing channels. I just want to clarify that, Jim, we weren't looking at the new support and stimulus fund for that.
Well, yes, I'm rather inclined to the view that it's, yes, fair point. Still 6 of 1, half a dozen of the other in a sense, but, well, all right. What if a smaller amount, if there was a smaller charge against that fund for the purposes that I've just suggested?
If I can just interrupt here, I think the problem is when you're talking about a short-term, 1 month or whatever it might be, there's a couple of things. One, how much time does it actually take someone to prepare their application and to get it in? Okay, so that's one of the things. So what you'll probably find is that people who have already got them done, they'll put them in because they were going to anyway, and then they're just getting them for free. It's hard to see how it will drive any increase. And if it does drive increase, then you've got a problem of actually trying to deal with more of the flow. It's at the moment, our building contractors are actually quite busy, as I understand it. They're all got good workloads ahead of them, and there's not a pressing need to do something straight away in this particular area. But it does come down to with both resource consents and with building consents. Is the work going to happen anyway? As about with which case it's money going in that's not really actually getting much benefit, versus it wouldn't happen unless you did it. And when we talk about a building project, most of them are quite significant budgets compared to the actual building consent cost. So again, it's hard to see how you make that judgment of it won't happen unless we give a free or half price building consent. In the meantime, we get, I think it's 1.2 million each year from building consents, and to try and make a meaningful change in that, I think is very difficult. So without really intending to debate it, I kind of am, but I think there's some reasons in there as to why it's probably not going to work as successfully as maybe what you think.
Yeah, no, I take the point. It's a fair comment.
Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kircher. Just the conclusion on page 96. The first paragraph states that recent research has indicated that councils need to keep their revenue stream to support targeted economic recovery. Then the last line, there is no evidence that reducing the fee will stop the project from proceeding. I think that should be, there is no evidence that increasing the fee will stop the project from proceeding. Is that right? Because that's so I think that the point that's being made is, does the change or reducing the fees assist the project to proceed? And the evidence is no, it's only 1.5% to 2.5% of the total cost of a typical building. Therefore, overall, the effect of it is very minimal. So I think, so from that point of view, I would support Mrs. Guyon that reducing the fee is probably not in council's best interest.
Thank you. Councillor Chapter.
I just think that a piecemeal approach to this can have some major unintended consequences. And you could ask yourself things about, like, is it fair if I happen to put my building application in the day before, the person the next day and they got it free, I would probably be a little bit daft about it. And also the fact that you're actually asking ratepayers then to pay for someone else's choices, which is also a little bit unfair. And then you've got to think about the workload. Like, if you say, right, we've got this 1 month or whatever it is that we're going to offer something for free, everyone that's in any position to be able to take advantage of that will take advantage of that. And now guys going to get snowed under. We're going to miss targets all over the show. possibly going to have audit outcomes at the end of it all. And there's a lot of flow-on effects, and I think there's other ways that we can deal with any issues that are created by COVID-19. And if people come back to us and say, because of the implications of COVID-19, I'm now no longer able to do this, there may be other avenues that we can discuss at that stage. But I think that what we've got in front of us just makes the most sense right now.
Councillor Hopkins.
Well, I was just going to say, my thought was that people were in favour, clearly, I don't think you are, that we might have said it would be in September or something, to give people a chance to get ready and do it. Equally, we could do it with jobs under 20 grand, but no one's interested in that either. I still remain uncomfortable using the Economic Development Fund to reimburse reductions in building and resource consent fees. I mean, if we're going to reduce them, I think we reduce them. I don't think we use that fund for that purpose. I really don't. I think it's a misuse of that fund.
Just point of order, it's saying to be considered rather than approving it by the fund, which is quite different. Still puts it in the hand of the council to make that decision on whether or not to be use of that fund.
Okay, it's clarification rather than a point of order. All good. Okay, right. So we have. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to move one.
Right.
I was going to move the motion.
Have you
1,
taken
4, 5, and 6 as the preferred options.
Okay. So look, going for.
Option 1 is the regulatory fees remain the same. At approved rates, I should say, sorry.
So you're moving it from 1 to 6?
Yeah, I'm moving as assessment of preferred options, page 96, option 1, 4, 5, and 6 other preferred options. I will move that.
Oh, okay. So the recommendations on page 92.
Sorry, wrong page, sorry.
Which sets out those particular details. Sorry, had me a wee bit confused there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. 4 pages. Yeah. No, that's good. So thank you. It's moved. Should we have a second? Yeah, Councillor Tandale, Councillor Kingham.
Look, just speaking to it, I mean, I perhaps think we should be taking these one at a time because I'm not quite so sure about number 4. I'm pretty happy with the rest, but I'm not happy with number 4. I think that's the explanations given are worth following through. I really don't like Councillor Hopkins' idea. I think that would be a monster. Having him month's fees.
It's off the table.
Thankfully. And so I'm all for the 6, 5 of them, but not number 4.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, I agree with Bill. I just need some clarification here on 4 and 5 because it agrees that requests for a reduction of building resource can be considered by councils existing and will the end, does the end refer to 5? So they're really one recommendation. I don't understand how you can have a 4 and a 5 when it's and the next one, which as I agree with Bill that these should be voted on separately.
I will put them separately. The end means that if they're all agreed to as we go through, they are ends, but as opposed to sometimes you get an or. And you have to choose
was an English I was taught at school.
2 things. So
it was a long while ago. English has changed.
So we because it's written the way it is, proper. Any one of those can come out and it still makes sense.
Oh.
So anyway, any other comments on the motion? Right. Well, I will put it. I think we're happy if I put the first 3. Anyone opposed to that? So we'll put the first 3. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? That is carried. Number 4. Do we want any specific discussion on this?
I think we do. I'm not dying a ditch on this one, obviously I seconded that, but I guess it's just, it can probably easily remove the fact that if those came to us, they could be diverted in that direction with no expectation that that's what we would approve. So I guess we're not actually putting anything in there that might not be sent down that track anyway, for council to make a decision if they support it or don't support it. So it's kind of a bit of a null and void recommendation on the fact that we're not actually tying council to anything. So it would make just as much sense for it not to be there as it does to have it there. It just probably gives officers a direction to send any requests that they might get through to for us to make a decision. So it just probably makes a nice clear avenue, and we still have the ability to agree or disagree.
Yeah. Councillor Hopkins and Councillor Holding.
I'd like to move an amendment if you entertain it, Nick.
Yes.
I agree that a request for a reduction of building and resource consent fees be considered on a case-by-case basis, semicolon, and which would then lead into 5.
Okay. Mover and seconder, would you be happy with that change? Otherwise, we'll look for a seconder. Maybe not. Okay. Is there a seconder for the amendment? There's none, so that lapses. So we're still sit with the original motion. Councillor Holding.
I was just going to agree with Councillor Timmerdale. I thought it was just a safeguard in there if there was sort of anything major development, there's the opportunity to encourage some stimulation for employment. So I didn't take it as sort of smaller consent fees or things like that, sort of more of a larger strategic opportunity.
Yeah, it would certainly, it would be an application, a separate application. It's not a carte blanche as far as officers can make the decision, get away, get on, make, spend the money. It's or make the discount. It's something that would have to come back to us as I read it. Councillor King.
I'll have to vote against this because I think this would be setting it up too hard for our officers to decide who would be eligible, and I just don't think it's something we should consider.
Councillor Devendale.
So I've read it the opposite as an avenue that we are providing our officers with, because I've actually got some direction. But I'd be really interested if we can, if they can debate to hear what officers have to say, whether it is helpful or not.
At the moment, we do have the odd request for a fee waiver, and that would be put through a standard process which goes to the executive committee to be considered through the Economic Development Fund. So if people are surprised at that, that probably shows how few we have had in, to date. So it is a point of clarification for us, is that would be the process if we felt it was appropriate.
That's the process we're already using. So it's kind of an almost null and void. We're doing it anyway.
Yeah, and it's I think the important thing also is that it's not officers making decisions. They might work on what does come forward as an application, but it's not making a decision on it. So, as I see it. Anyway, I think hopefully things are clear enough. We can put this. So those who are in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against?
No.
Okay, that's
I'm going to go no as well.
Could I have my vote recorded, please?
It's carried.
And mine too, please.
Okay, go on to 5. Agrees that deferral and or part payment options be made available for building, resource consent, verification and inspection fees. Do you want to make comments specifically on this one, Mrs. Guy?
This is looking at, I guess, particularly all of those fees can are some of our higher costs for customers. So a verification fee can vary from anything from $235 to about $900. So for cafes, for example, that are just coming back open, that's quite an outlay. This means they still make the payment. We just agree the terms of that payment. It's something that we haven't offered in the past for the regulatory arm of business, but there is no reason why we can't consider that.
I think it's great.
I think it proves that we're sort of business friendly, that we're prepared to negotiate, so I'm for it. Yeah.
I think enough heads nodding that I can put this now. So those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And item 6 approves the extension of time for dog registration penalty to apply on the 30th of September 2020. That's instead of 1st of July. Okay. So we're dog friendly as well as business friendly. Okay. Interest
May I ask a very quick question?
Councillor Hopkins.
Just looking at, noting that dog control is the only one where the users are paying the full 100%. In those years when when we've actually made more money than we should, what do we pass that? Do dog owners get that by way of a discount in subsequent years?
It goes into a reserve, and that reserve covers the better term swings and roundabouts. So we have not increased our dog control fees for 5 years, and that's because we can call on that fund if we need to.
Thank you.
So that's the fund that's helped upgrade the dog pounds.
Yes.
It pays the thousands and thousands of dollars of legal fees when you have problem dogs and problem owners and various things. So it's very difficult to try and manage it in an up and down sort of way. It's keep it level, cover the costs.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, we'll put that one. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to 6.4 parking update, page 98. Who wants to speak to this?
So I'll just make a quick start and then hand over to Mr. Bardsley. So this report, Council asked us to consider what we should do at the end of June when our 3-month free period expires. When we first considered this, we actually, this is very similar to what we've just talked about. It's very difficult for me to recommend that we should not be taking fees when I'm responsible for the recovery of that particular activity. However, when Mr. Bardsley went out and talked to a number of businesses down the street, they gave him a lot of feedback that suggested we should reconsider that. Hence the reason that we're suggesting an extension to free parking and that be paid for from the support and stimulus fund.
Right. Sorry. Got me confused.
Right, pretty straightforward. Any comments? Councillor Percival?
There hasn't been a great period of time since we've opened up to where we are. Is the warden still going around? And does she notice that there's been abuse of the privilege?
Can I have that to Mr.
Yes,
Bardsley?
Chair. Yes, she has been going around and providing flyers for people's vehicles, just asking people to be respectful of the fact that free parking is to promote customers to go to businesses. She has had a small number of people complain about people parking in the free parking all day who may be working in local businesses, but overall the initiative has been positive from business owners and from the general public.
I noticed the Meek Street one is pretty crowded.
It is, yes.
And that's people that are working in town. So whether there's a way, if we do carry on with what we have at the moment, is there a way of having designated areas for free parking to say it's against permits or whatever? Because I only just managed to squeeze in a taxi this morning at 8:15. Is there some sort of way we could have that I wouldn't say reserved, but allocated parking perhaps for.
You know, I can answer this one if you like. I mean, this is part of the complexity of going to totally free parking is you end up with actually car park get full and then there's not room for the shoppers and so forth. You can use time limited parking, so you can make 2-hour time limits and various things, and that keeps some parks turning over. You've still got to have enforcement, and whether they make enough from fines or it needs to be actually rate funded, that's another question. So it's definitely not an easy topic to deal with, and it is about making sure there is, you know, if people are going to the aquatic centre, or if they're going to particular shop in an area where there's not a lot of on-street car parking, there's a couple of blocks like that, that they can park in the off-street car parks and make sure there's good turnover. And so it has to be signage. I think the really important thing with this is we are doing this to help local businesses. We want them to be able to have people come, stop nearby, go to their shop, spend money. If those business owners, all their staff are taking up those car parks, that is a major problem because they're defeating the purpose of doing this. And so I'd just say to all business owners, leave those parks for your customers. That's what we're doing this for. And you know, we all want it to work. We want our businesses to thrive. Let's do it by making sure everyone's cooperating and doing the right thing in the first place. End of sermon. Councillor Hallstein.
Thank you, Mayor Kirchhoff. Just on page 101, a couple of questions there, if I can. The very top one, option 3, which says free parking with enforcement of time restricted parking. And just that infringement fines for exceeding time would generate a small amount of revenue. This does not encourage the turnover of paid parking spaces. Well, I think it does. So can someone explain why it doesn't encourage people to turn over if they're getting penalised for staying over their time? And the second question was further down, the option would see the approximate revenue loss of 63K, which would be recovered through the support stimulus fund. So my question there is, why does it need to be recovered through the SNS fund? Why is it not just a loss to the parking account for the year? Right, 2 questions. Please explain option 3 that doesn't make sense to me, and why the support and stimulus fund is needed.
So the option 3 offers, as I said, some limited parking options for short-term parkers in the time restricted zones, which are generally on the sides of the main street and on side streets. So the infringement fines, the officer has to go out, has to mark the tyres, and obviously if people exceed that time, then they issue an infringement notice. So the recovery of that money is quite time consuming. And the reason it doesn't necessarily encourage turnover of parking spaces is because people generally are using those ones for short time periods, but it's the centre parks where people seem to be the most coveted parking.
So this is referring to those paid parks, but they're not paying for them at the moment.
Yeah.
So the parking, as long as they like in here, and the ones where there is time limited parking, they are turning over in there. So you know, it's part of, if we were to move to all free parking, you would put time limited on a lot of the main street, for example, and you'd put, you know, whether it's 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever it might be. But at the moment, there's no time limit on them, so they utilise. Some people are utilising that to stay half a day or all day.
But this does state quite clearly, Mayor Kirchhoff, infringement fines for exceeding time restricted parking.
Yeah. So
it's.
So that's referring to the time limited ones.
Yeah.
Right. Because the other ones, we're not giving them any fines. If they're in a normal, it's normally a paid park, but it's not at the moment. They stay all day. We're not. There's no fine for them.
Yeah, understand entirely. Yep.
So it's a challenge, and if we move to free parking, that's where everything's 2 hours or whatever it might be.
My interpretation of this is that if it is a time limited park, which is what I read it to be, it's a 30-minute park and they stay for an hour, then they receive a parking infringement, which to me is an encouragement to move them on. So it's not going to actually, it does encourage them to move on, does not encourage.
No, the paid parks aren't time limited, you don't have to pay. So they're not paid parks, it's those ones, and then they're talking about the other type.
Right, okay. But just the last bit regarding the use of the support and stimulus fund, why was that felt to be necessary to reimburse the parking revenue account?
In the end, that is your decision to make. As I said at the beginning, it's difficult for me to make a recommendation to you where I will not achieve our recovery objectives. So using the support and stimulus fund would assist that.
Okay, fair. Thank you, Mrs. Guy.
Right, Councillor Tannenbaum, and then Councillor Hopkins. And Councillor Norman.
Just a question around time limited parking, because obviously the support's looking for stuff that we already have in place. Is it, do we have to go through a process or any bylaw or anything like that for us to time limit Main Street parking or anything like that? Is that possible or not really?
Yeah, I'd have to clarify that. I believe we do have a parking bylaw that we would have to consider with that. But most importantly, we talk in the report about the machines expire in 2023 or the end of life, and by then we will have hopefully completed the town centre and harbour connection projects, and that will give us a better opportunity to consider how we want parking to be in our township. So our suggestion would be to coordinate that so we've got all the information when we consider that.
Yeah, to make one-off changes or change one or two parts here and there, we don't go through a particular process, but it may be different if we're making wide-ranging changes to the Main Street. Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, look, if Councillor Wolstein is concerned about using the SAS fund, so am I. I'm just checking, am I right to assume that in fact the net loss so far is not 63,000 but about 46, because you have to offset the saving we've made of 17,286 plus 5,762 for contracted services and so forth. So far it's cost us about 46,000. Is that, are you nodding, Andrew? Yes, that's very good. Can I just ask, a number of people, business people, have said that other business people are shooting themselves in the foot because they are using these parks. And that point to the fact that Humber Street's pretty much empty now, whereas previously it was chocker. What would your attitude be to say allowing free parking till, the suggestion to me was up till 11, not till lunchtime, because then you'll just get the same clagging. But if you made a 2-hour free park in the mornings and reintroduce charges after that, what would your attitude be to that?
Getting that information to the public would be difficult. Like we could put it on social media, we could put it on the council website, but then you get the people who don't get that message and then get caught out. So it's about that balance of fairness, and about then we end up with a lot of appeals for people who are ticketed and they believe that it was free parking.
But even if we what if we stretch the free parking for another month, and after that, so we've got a whole month so people get used to it, we put some leaflets on the machines themselves, as of August 1, free parking till 11 AM, something, I don't know. What, would that be a possibility, do you think?
Yes.
Thank you.
Everything's a possibility.
Yes, I know. Well, it's so time limiting.
I was just going to highlight there is a small cost each time we change the instructions that we put on the parking machine. Is that a fair word to use? Yes. I can't tell you the figure off my head, but there's a small cost to that each time we change it.
Councillor Norman.
Just confirming with this one that there's no reserves to cover the swings and roundabouts here, as opposed to the support and stimulus fund. Like, knowing that the support and stimulus fund has to be replenished, it just seems a wee bit of a interesting use. It's just going to set us up for some danger later, because we actually need to be doing it at this time.
Excuse me, Mr. Hope. My understanding is that any surplus from parking goes into the general surpluses. No?
Untitled Waitaki.
It's 15K.
That's the honorary business rate.
Yeah.
So that's where any surplus or deficit flows into.
We've got Councillor Holding, Councillor Groby, and Councillor Percival. Get in the queue.
I was waiting for the free parking trial. Are we going to do any sort of measurement to see how, basically we've heard with some people liked it and some haven't, we had a little bit of feedback. Is there going to be any measurement just to really gauge how it's gone?
Basically, I went to the Chamber of Commerce and got some feedback from the chairman, and he hadn't heard anything negative about it. So that's where I got basically the information from. And then the some other business leaders, and I was overwhelming support for it. In terms of measuring it, we could go back to the public and ask generally, like I know that members of the public obviously are happy about the free parking. The business owners are very happy about it, and there's a small number of people who I've heard personally who aren't happy because they haven't been able to find parks in off-street parking, such as Eden Street. But actually collecting that information in any sort of a research format would be quite difficult.
Councillor Groby.
Thank you, Chair. Look, 3 points from me. I think we've got to be very careful that we don't use the support stimulus fund as a crutch. And I think we're looking in some other documents in these papers as a crutch. And I would suggest that the CEO and the respective manager, where there is an impact of on a KPI, that's ironed out long before it gets to this point, after this point, because of the recommendation that has been suggested here. But I think it is a great opportunity to help educate people in Oamaru and surrounding areas that are visiting that we are making this contribution, and the education that goes with that is going to help the business community and support them. So I'm supportive of option 2, but I won't be supporting it if it's recovered from the support stimulus fund.
Councillor Percival.
Yeah, for as long as I can remember, Stafford Street to Timaru with part-time and parking has always been a success. And from what I believe from friends up there, there's very little abuse of it. I would like to see Thames Street have that same status. And the other part, of course, carry on with that. I know that would be difficult, but it's certainly worked in Timaru for many, many years and been successful. And I can't see why Thames Street couldn't have the same application as that. Just a point.
Another good question. Excellent.
I don't make questions, you know.
Councillor Tavendale. You certainly can. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Halalele.
Just to speak to it, because there's been a lot of people raise the support stimulus fund, which at this stage I'm moving it with that included on purpose, because my reasoning for wanting to have this extended at this stage before we've actually had a chance to do a look at the policy and look at the whole parking in general is to make sure we're doing what we can as a council to support mainly our Main Street traders and make life as easy as we can for the stimulus of things. So when it comes to support the stimulus fund, the reason that I'm making the decision that I want to make today is basically in the recovery following the COVID-19 shutdown. So I do actually think it's got quite a correlation. And I think there needs to be a bigger discussion when we actually look at parking as to if we want to have it as free parking, how do we pay for that? And that needs to happen. But right now we're looking at short term, and I think the short term implications, the reason we're discussing this right now is because of COVID-19. And I think what we're trying to achieve, if we are voting to say we're having free parking for a bit longer right now, is that we're trying to support our business community, and we're trying to stimulate a little bit more economic activity. And I think in that respect, for me, it actually sits right smack bang in that fund. And that's for a short term. I think long term, there certainly needs to be another way of funding that. But we've got to also stop setting officers up by saying, we're going to take that and take that. We want you to find ways of dealing with it. If we're going to say, right, you guys are going to take that as a loss, we need to understand what the implications of that are and what they potentially might be cutting as a result. And that's a bit of a bigger discussion. But basically for me, the driving factor for me voting for an extension of free parking is so that we can stimulate a bit more business activity, and it's been supported by Chamber of Commerce and a few other groups, which I really appreciate you guys going to talk to. I think it's really important. So I think it's the right place for me right now. And I think in the long term, whether we go back to paid parking, when we look at it as a whole and how we fund it, that's the different discussion.
Thank you. Councillor
Yeah, I support Councillor Tavendale on this issue. I think the thing is, it's a really good chance to use it as an experiment, if you like, for 3 months and see just what the effects are going to be. I do know that yesterday when I came to town, I couldn't find a park down this end of town, and the bars aren't even open. So, you know, it'll be a little bit chaotic, but if people's behaviour changed a little, it could work. So here's a chance to find out.
Thank you. I'm going to speak in favour as well. Councillor McRovey, you convinced me. I was pretty convinced already, but you said exactly the words. You said about using this as a crutch. What is a crutch but a support? And we're talking about support and stimulus. This is actually about supporting our businesses and to get back into action, to cover the shortfall of revenue and income they've had over that time, and to allow on-route shoppers to get into our shops and spend money. That is the purpose of it. So it's very, as Tavendale said, it's very fitting that we actually utilise the fund for this. We set it up to support and stimulate, and this is going to do both of those things during this recovery period, and hopefully we come out of it stronger. So I will be voting in favour. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I'm going to vote against number 2. I hope you put them separately. Not because I'm opposed to free parking, although I think 3 months may be excessive. Personally, I prefer to do it on a month-by-month basis. But I just say to other councillors, our support and stimulus fund has $2 million in it. If you read other reports in the agenda today, we've already allocated roughly 700,000 of that, and there are other allocations that will take the amount that's available in the fund to around $1 million or even less. And if we assign 46 times 3, so that's roughly $120,000 from that fund to essentially pay for the free parking period, 3-month trial, we're not going to have much of a fund left at all. And I believe it is prudent to try and keep as much of that fund intact for the applications we expect. And I'm with Colin. If we agree to the parking, then whatever the quantum is, it's a loss against the account. Full stop. And then we just wear it. We accept it. We see the benefit, and we suck up the cost. We don't spend more of the support and stimulus fund than we have already allocated, to its detriment, in my view.
Councillor McRovey and Councillor Newton.
Just one final point from me. We haven't even approved the support and stimulus fund at this point. Just remember that when you're making a decision on this particular option. That's all I'll say.
Thank you. Councillor Newton.
Yes, I have to question whether the Economic Development Fund could be used as an alternative to this stimulus, because it is development.
Wouldn't be enough reserves to cover this amount. Be a challenge.
Sorry, Chair, I'm not sure I can answer that, but so we would be looking at 63 plus what we've given 48,000, which I don't know how much is in the Economic Development Fund.
Is that the annual amount or the 3 month?
It's 3 months.
So I think, it replenishes at something like 30,000 a year. There is not that sort of money. Right. Any other, sorry, Councillor Alston,
Just a point of clarification, please, Mayor Church. Councillor Hopkins mentioned that figure of a loss, but option 2 on page 100 states this would see a projected 6-month revenue loss of a further 63K.
No, we've established from Andrew that it's 63 minus the savings in the contractors, which comes to a net 46.
For the 3 months?
Per month.
No, this is 6 months. This is 6 months.
Yeah, but, sorry. If you look at, bear with me, Mayor Kircher, if you look at the figure that says the estimated loss in revenue is 63,000, that's on page 100. But at the same time, we've saved 17,000 plus fine. And my reading is that, so that's.
Mr. Bartley, can you answer this? Thanks.
That's for the 3 months.
3 months. Okay.
So far for the period of the initiative. It would be the same amount again if we continue this for 3 months.
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry. Right. Yeah, I understand. Sorry. Forgive me.
Yeah. So I think it's. So I think thanks for clarifying that, Mr. Bartley. Yes. So $21,000 per month is what we're talking about, and how that loss of revenue is accounted for. But I just want to raise the point too of the cost saving, the monthly cost of the service to maintain and collect cash, $5,762. That's nearly $70,000 a year. Seems a very high cost. I think that figure could perhaps bear some scrutiny. Has it been scrutinised in the near future, in the recent times? Or?
Yeah. That's a contract that we have with our contractors for the maintenance and for the cash collection.
Yeah, understand.
There's quite a bit of work involved in the cash collection, but what we've actually done is we've gone through the process of changing our contractors, and we're actually bringing that parking machine maintenance in-house, and our new regulatory officers be responsible for that maintenance, and the contractor will only be collecting the cash, and that contract has been halved as a result of that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Kircher, and thank you, Mr. Bowes. I was very pleased to hear that, because I thought for that sort of money, council could employ a full-time person to collect the cash and maintain the machines with money with time to spare.
Councillor Holding. No, all good. Okay. Right. I'm going to put number 1. Go back to those. So receive and note the information. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Put number 2, that we approve the continued free parking for a 3-month period from the 1st of July, funded from the support and stimulus fund. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
No. Have a show of hands, please. Those in favour. Those against? Okay, that's lost. That number 3, we approve the renewal extension for permit parking holders.
Yep.
Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? It's carried. I'll move from the chair that council approves continued free parking for a 3-month period from the 1st of July, funded by the parking activity. Do we have a second for that? Councillor Wolfstein. So we'll put that activity into deficit, and we'll deal with that later on. Councillor Tavendale.
I'll go for it because I want to see the free parking continued. But I do think it's not really dealing with the issue with the funding comes on.
Councillor Holding.
So I just had a question.
Yep.
What's the current parking account sitting?
Is there a credit?
Last time I thought it was a credit by.
I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
No, it's not a figure they.
Year-to-date parking enforcement revenue is 136,000.
It doesn't tell us what the reserve actually is, whether it's accredited or whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing. You know, we 2 months ago or whatever, we approved a support and stimulus fund. This is all about support and stimulus, and agreed to actually use the fund we set up for that. But that is what it is. So we've got this alternative motion in front of us. So I'm going to put that. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, we have 10 minutes left before we break for lunch. So we will start on the support and stimulus funding operation procedures, and we'll have to interrupt it for lunch in the middle. So welcome, Mr. Quinn and Mrs. Elgar. Something as well. Excellent. Okay, so welcome to the new setup. Chapter. Great. If you'd like to use the report and speak for it.
Very good. Councillor, well, it's quite a long report because it does include quite an operational focus to it, but I think the important things here today are the principles. This report outlines the mechanisms to give effect to actually the intentions that council's actually already communicated, provide support and stimulus funds in a prudent and targeted way. So it is built on the guidance of the subcommittee of council, and that has chosen the 3 mechanisms to focus on different needs. So we have looking at different lenses: relief, support, and stimulus. The paper has started the allocation of funds to address the need, and it's got some delegations included so that actually committees can act quickly on those applications with merit, but also a mechanism that above the delegation level, full council have the ability to decide on an application. Includes the eligibility criteria and the waiting for assessment, which is a valid approach given that we do have these 3 intricacies of a scoring sheet we agreed with each of the 3 committees, but they do reflect quite a different approach to what we're trying to provide.
Okay, questions?
Yeah, just a procedural one, and maybe as much to you, Mika, as it is to Jared. If we are to accept, and I tend to accept the proposal that the executive committee makes considerations on matters, I'm just wondering, would it be possible for those, when the executive committee does consider those ED applications to the fund, could those considerations be timetabled on the day other committee meetings occur, which would enable other councillors to at least sit in and listen? I just think, I mean, it would also probably ensure a little bit more coverage from the media. So I'm not going to challenge the notion that that the decision sits with the EC, but I would like that those, consider those matters to be scheduled as part of the committee day. Is that a possibility, please?
It's a possibility.
Thank you.
I mean, we haven't gone into the logistics of that, but the idea is that we do need to schedule regular meetings of that committee and the other committee, the grants committee, grants and awards committee, to make decisions that come up, and so that people aren't waiting an inordinate amount of time. I do make the point that there will be some of these items, potentially more in the economic one, depending on the situation, that are done public excluded because of commercial reasons, but as much as possible will be done in public.
Well, indeed, and I think that, just very quickly, the grants one is more likely to deal with personal hardships, and for those reasons, I think it might be more appropriate just that committee continues to operate as it has. I was thinking that the ED stuff, the stimulus, the opportunities, the resilience building, all of that stuff that everybody should be, plugged into, outside and in my view.
Then, yeah, you may have a, this mention of the purpose of the other one. I mean, that's as much around stimulus and as well, with the community grants side of things. That's about organisations getting out there and doing good things, making Waitaki a better place to live. As much as it is about supporting organisations that may have lost revenue and have their existence threatened in the short term. So there are great opportunities for both. I don't see one as picking up the pieces while the other one's having doing all the glory stuff. So the idea is that we spread the workload well. Everyone's involved in one or the other, with some really good participation and opportunity for everyone to be in there. Councillor Milwine, then Councillor Tennant.
Just giving forward to the application process and the information required that we talk about on page 113. I just read those with interest, and I just would like to question whether the requests that we've had placed in front of us so far for the support and stimulus fund today and the ones that are still to come have been through this apparently quite robust process.
We have given some preliminary consideration, but as pointed out, we're waiting until the stimulus fund is actually approved, but we're confident we can move on once it's approved.
Councillor Tennant.
Just following on from Councillor Hopkins' questions, my understanding, I just want to make sure I've got that right, is that the Mayoral Relief Fund is probably more likely to deal with individuals.
True.
Grants and awards is more community based, is that right?
Yeah.
And just for the chair, asking Councillor Hopkins, take your point on the executive committee meeting on Wednesday. Do you think that the same level of importance should be given to the Grants and Awards Committee? Because I probably do.
Yeah, probably, yes. I think I would share that view, yes. Thank you for asking.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Moreira.
Just a very quick one on level of delegation to committee. Those amounts there, 3 and 20 and 20, they are per application, aren't they? I'm reading that correctly, it's per application. So for example, executive committee can make decisions per application up to 20,000 per application. That's fine, that's right. Thank you.
It's one of those things, what's the right number? And it's like, let's put something in that's
I'm happy with the number. Discussion. Yeah, happy with the number.
Yeah. Councillor Nugent.
Just one question in relation to the original resolution 2020/51, where it required that each body, being the various committees, develop the criteria or guidelines or eligibility guidelines for fund usage. Just wondering where that sits within this document, because it is excluded.
Because of the 3 types of lenses, you're going to have slightly different weightings for each of the actual elements for each fund. And so once the membership of the committees, which is part of this paper, is made, we have a draft basic scoring sheet that we can send to each of those committees so they form their own scoring sheet.
These weightings, where have they come from?
They've come from my consultations with the subcommittee of council in terms of the emphasis that we're trying to achieve in the fund. So I've suggested those based on previous experience.
Councillor Alstein. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mick. Just following up Councillor Moreira's question, I just wonder in recommendation 3, to make that more clear, whether it could say executive committee up to $20,000 per claim. So per application, yeah, or per grant, or whatever you call it, per. Just to make it clear that is the maximum of each that they can, the executive committee or the grants and awards committee or the Mayoral Relief Fund can pay out per application to the fund.
Distributes funds per application, that's all.
Just to clarify that point.
Good to go. Absolutely. Councillor Tennant.
So my notes, I can't find where it was because I didn't get that. I had noticed somewhere that we were looking for a business case, and then following that, there's a whole lot of questions. Is that are those questions intended to be what we call a business case, or are you looking, I just sort of worry that business case might have a connotation, and whether or not we've confused it.
No, in fact, it was actually discussed that the, if you like, the extent of the case would be dependent on the type of application. So, you know, a welfare or support or relief application will not require a business case. It's what's your case for relief or support, and the size is dependent on the magnitude of the application.
We're just scheduled to have the lunch break now. We have to take it at this time, so I'm just going to adjourn the meeting and we'll be back at 1 p.m. Thanks very much. So with discussing the support stimulus fund, item 6.5 on page 103. You're halfway through questions, and Councillor Tindall, you had a supplementary one to the last one. You'd like to share it.
I did. It was still just around the business case. I just wonder whether it has any legal implications or legal meaning that we might find ourselves stuck on. I don't know.
My understanding is that we would preserve any indemnity or lack of liability in a funding agreement, whichever person or organisation is successful in the application.
I guess I'm more thinking around, we're saying we're expecting a business case, if that terminology has a legal implication to it, and people who may take exception to funding that's granted, whether we've ticked the boxes and actually got that terminology correct.
I think we can communicate to each of the applicant groups what we mean by case and avoid the word business case if it's not intended for some sort of commercial entity.
That's cool, because it's not so much the business or the groups that are applying that I'm actually concerned about. It's more the perception around the expectation of what people have to provide to us and what they do provide.
Yeah, the guidance has always been that it would be relevant to the amount of the application and the type of application. So you wouldn't expect the same sort of information for a case seeking a, say, welfare or support thing, rather than necessarily a way to provide a stimulus for creation of jobs.
Maybe there's a business case or
proposal document.
Something. Yeah, that's cool.
I was going to suggest that we just had a word or proposal document.
Councillor Hopkins,
Are you taking questions at the moment on the draft funding and operating procedures document?
Well, on the, I guess we're got any general questions, but have you got something specific?
Yes, I have one very quickly. There's this reference to a coordinating group which would consist of Jared, Helen and Leanne. I'm wondering, it's a bit problematic because people who might be involved haven't necessarily been approached, but I would just like to add a kind of a blanket phrase, and others as needed, or others as necessary, or something. It's just a very general phrase that might, without going into too many details, if you think about the agenda, all of the agendas today, there may be an argument for at least one or other person being involved. So I'm just suggesting a kind of a coverall phrase to be added, that's all.
Well, the idea is to have a fixed group. They are the group, but there's absolutely no restriction on, you know, getting others to advise and bring information in.
Okay.
I think that's what you're pointing to, is making sure that there's other, others who may have more specialised perspectives that can be brought in. And I just asked, that would be the intention.
I think also in clause 28, there is a reference to maybe that need as it arises.
Is that administrative? Yeah, but I took administrative support just to be kind of secretarial stuff rather and contributing opinions. But anyway, that's fine. Look, if we're happy it's covered, it's covered. That's good. Okay, thank you.
I think it's one of those things where in practice, we won't be getting applications coming to us as elected members out of the blue. I think everything's going to go through that coordinating group.
And rightly so.
And the interaction will happen between him and the applicant. If there's more information needed and so on. So whatever we get coming to us will generally be something that we feel that we've got all the information, or we absolutely will have the ability to ask for further information. We need to be satisfied. This is ratepayer money. It's really important that we keep with what we do with it. Right, any other questions? So we go to the recommendations. Councillor Tavendale.
I'm happy to move the recommendations.
Okay, move it for those. Second, Councillor Holding. Okay, discussion. Councillor Percival.
Yeah. It's really good. In early March, when we passed the resolution to create this fund, I was as enthusiastic as everybody else in the fact that we would be able to help, assist, and guide and aid in all those good words. But we had no concept of this, what I call the tsunami of funding from central government, which seems to have covered a huge amount of the majority of areas which we probably presumed that we would help in. But this funding from central government is coming on a daily basis still. I mean, every day there's another million or 2 or 5, or like on Friday there was 80 million put forward the next 2 to 4 years for libraries. And I mean, over the weekend there was other avenues and incentives put out. What central government's doing is absolutely incredible, but we're going to pay in the long run. But it seems to have covered all the bases. So, and most of the social and wellbeing agencies have had major top-ups to help and assist all groups of people across the spectrum. So it really concerns me why we're actually creating this. And I know it's gone a long way and a lot of people put a lot of work into it, but it still concerns me with what we've had from central government. And I must say, this is going to get criticism, on a personal basis, I find it quite offensive and disrespectful that one of the finest military regiments in the world is actually, you've taken the abbreviation of that regiment. And I find it offensive as an ex-serving trooper. And yeah, that's all I've got to say.
That could be easy.
For what it's worth, I keep referring to it as the yes Andes fund, and I utilise that, but it keeps going back to SAS. That's a.
Just use.
I do take on board what you're saying on that.
Just use an ampersand. Just use the ampersand, the thing on the keyboard. Just change it to that. That would solve the problem. The answer
So
on the keyboard.
we can sort because we don't want to leave.
No.
Not have anything there either, because that's another military reference which we don't want. Councillor Holbrook.
Just to respond to Councillor Purcell's concerns through to page 111 and eligibility, applications for support which are eligible for alternative grants or funds currently available from other entities, including but not limited to central government, government departments, government agencies, charities, philanthropic organisations or clubs. So it's kind of a more targeted local approach where if they've got access to those other things, it'll be the last stop.
But Councillor Normine and Councillor Hopkins.
I'm just, I've always, of course, struggled with this one, being a huge supporter from the start as well. But it kept heading off in directions that confused me and concerned me. We finally got the document to a place that I can actually handle it. But then I see today, throughout our minutes, the way that we're still dealing with spending it, and we're not really sticking to the policy that's in front of us already. And I totally, it just concerns me that we're not following our own rules that we're trying to set in place. It just is coming across as something that we're just using for whatever, you know, we're already allocated approximately half of it. And I'm just not sure what we're really up to and whether we do really need it. I just want to totally get that out there. It just isn't sitting well.
Point of clarification, we haven't actually allocated anything.
We're trying to, yeah.
We've got some other reports which we need to consider.
Yeah.
And absolutely, you're taking on board your points. I think you're right. We need to look at those. At the moment, we have no rules around this. And so if these are the rules, then let's look at them through that lens. It has been chicken and egg in this particular case, and we need to be clear on those other reports when we consider them. So are we being fair? Is this good use of rate payment? Are we avoiding duplication? All of the considerations we should make. Councillor Hopkins and Councillor King.
Look, if I'm correct, I don't think we've allocated anything yet. I mean, we voted against one allocation this morning. There are allocations in front of us, and clearly out of the 2 million, this would be 630,000 if we vote on this today. I beg to differ with Councillor Percival, whose opinions I always respect and enjoy. I quite like the idea of us having a fund of our own. I'm hoping, my sort of dream, I imagine it, is that somebody will come with a brilliant idea that's going to, a bit like Dawn Aerospace at the airport or whatever. And everyone's going to go, wow, here? Yes, here. And a little bit of seed capital from this fund may well get that over the line. And for that reason, to have this up our sleeve for our projects and our possibilities and our future, I support it. I would ask very quickly in closing, ask the mover and seconder if they'd agree to two very minor changes to the recommendations. One, adopts the attached funding and operating procedures for the support and stimulus fund, bracket the fund, with amendments, because I mean, there are typos and a few things like that. And number three, approves the level of delegation of those committees and mayoral funds to distribute funds per application as follows. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
We're happy with that. Okay, Councillor McRory.
Look, I wrote down the words when I was reading this, and this has troubled me. And it's troubled me of more recent times when I've seen how much money is coming out from central government. As I think Kelly pointed out, it's coming out every day, or it has been every second day. And Guy said,
they look so much alike.
It might be every third day, but it's coming out by quantities this country has never ever seen before. So I'm asking myself now then, if that's the case, I wonder if we're creating this fund that just adds extra layers to our decision-making processes that we could otherwise make by not having this fund. Yes, I'm supportive of an S&S fund of some sort, but does this actually mean we have to have a second this and a second that, different procedures for something that we might be able to do already? So I'm just sort of a bit nervous about it. It's well and truly documented. The documentation, I think, is good. And if central government hadn't put anything out, I mean, we're talking billions and billions of dollars, and our little $2 million fund will go bugger all to save this district or go towards something for the district, in my view. So I just asked that question for us to think about. That's all. But the terms and conditions and the document, I think, is good. But do we need it is the question I'm asking myself.
Yeah, thank you, Miku. Just the good points raised by the councillors on both sides of me. And I was one of the councillors on the working group that was tasked with bringing forward this recommendation to council, and it was a very difficult matter to work through. As you can, from the comments now, you can well imagine that there were lots of points of view in trying to safeguard it. But I think there's a couple of points I'd make is that the these grants, the grants are up to a maximum. It's not 20,000 per application, up to 20,000. So there's, and every application comes back to the to one of those three groups to the side, and if it exceeds the limits in recommendation 3, it comes to the full council. But there may well be cases locally which do not meet with any of the central government funds that have been made available and keep becoming made available. And I think this does give council the ability to react to a local cause that is not covered from central government funding agency. So, and it's very difficult to define how to run it. It's been a very difficult process, but I think it's got to the point now where I think it is, to me, it's not clear. It's a little bit of a see how it goes, suck and see how it goes. And you can't determine every rule before it even gets into effect. And, you know, council may receive an avalanche of applications. We may receive very few applications. But it's up to the three groups there to deal with the applications when they come in. And it does give the local council the ability to help our local community in some way if that need is shown to be there. But it's, yeah, we'll wait and see what applications are made.
Thank you very much, and my sincere apologies to Councillor King. I've missed a couple of times here.
No, that's okay. Look, I've been pretty uneasy about this one, and in fact, a week or two ago, I would have voted right against it. I'm going to vote for it now, but I've got faith in our councillors to weed out what shouldn't go through. I think, you know, it is ratepayer money. I think I'm going to have a few ratepayer mates out in Corriedale who are going to be asking me, what are you up to, you guys? And so, but I have got faith in the ability and the of our councillors to keep a tight rein on this and make sure that it goes where it's meant to go. It can be very easily putting out money, but it's ratepayer money and it's got to be wisely spent.
Well said.
Councillor Halliday.
Yeah, no, thank you for the opportunity just to speak about this issue. Like Councillor Milmine and Councillor Percival, I too was quite conflicted during the process of discussing this issue. And I think for me it was because our process wasn't quite straightforward, and we kind of went all over the place. Because we all had different ideas about what we could utilise this, the potential fund for. But I want to put my community representative hat on for a moment there and just kind of share a bit about the experience of being in a small community group. We were a number of volunteer hours during the lockdown, probably averaging 60 hours a week. We didn't have much funding to kind of help respond to the COVID difficulties of our Pacific community. So it took a lot of work, a lot of volunteer time, a lot of volunteer power to try and bring some of that central government resource down to our little community. And a big part of it was around lobbying. They're central government, big organisations, and to try and make our invisible community here a lot more visible. But that was because there's some of us in the community that are able to drive things. And that was with the support of Safer Waitaki as well. So I'm just kind of speaking for those little groups that are invisible in our community, and they don't necessarily have the support of the big government agencies. And I too was kind of against passing this, but I'm kind of changing because I'm thinking of those small groups. They really need that support. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you. Councillor Tavendale.
I think it's been a real journey working on this fund, and I think we all had different ideas about what it could mean for our community, and trying to do that also over Zoom meetings, I think also added to the challenge, because you see the one face on the camera and you don't know where everyone is sitting, you don't get that feel of people, and so it's been a really tough journey. And thanks to the three that have been on the working group and to feedback and we've had from our staff as well, because it's actually created something that's moved a long way. But what we're doing is, first of all, we're not reinventing the wheel and working within our current structures, which I think is really strong, and it shows that, you know, these are tried and true structures that work, but we've got a few more tightened kind of rules around it when it comes to this spend, because obviously we don't usually have that kind of budget to deal with in that way. So that's been really good. I think when we talk about sticking to our own policy, it is really important, but and every decision we've got has got to go over the same scope that, you know, anything else has got to go under. But I also think we need to be open-minded to use it for that, because I think the implications can be really good for our community. So we, you know, we talked about the parking today, and obviously that didn't get through, but I do think it's these little initiatives that start to make some really big changes in our community. And it's the little things that change business confidence, they change our community's confidence and the way they see things, whether they spend money here or spend money elsewhere, all that sort of stuff is little feel-good things that our council can be seen to be driving. And I think we've up till now not been able to be seen as being very reactive at all. So hopefully this will give us time to actually say, great opportunity, we can move fast, we can help with that. I think we've got some really good people that have got some great tie-ins to our community that are actually going to be filtering all this through. So we're going to be getting some really good information, which I think is really important. The process is important, but I actually think we've got a very good process here, and I'm really heartened to see that. But I also think with the people we've got sitting in behind and the mechanics of this, we've got the ability to seek out and find some really beneficial areas for this funding to help out, which I think that's really important. And you don't always know what you don't know, and I get that there's a lot of government funding, but hopefully these people we've got working in here are going to be across that as well and be able to send people in those directions and help out and be a bit of a conduit in that respect. But it also means that we're not going to have things fall over before we say, hey, we should have done something about that for the community. And as our own community, we need to be the ones that are making the decisions and not saying, oh, we hope that there's going to be a fund coming out from government to handle that or fix that or to jump on that opportunity. And this gives us the opportunity, if that funding's not there, and if it is, maybe we can help those people do ducks in a row and get the funding that they're looking for. So I think it's been a tough process, but I think we've got something good here. And I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of it.
Thank you very much. I just want to speak in favour of it. This, yeah, just really want to just reiterate those comments that this is absolutely, we're seeking to avoid duplicating what the government is doing. They are not doing everything, and there are gaps in their funding, and Councillor Halalady referred to some of those situations where we've got a lot of people working really hard to try and make things happen in our community, and this is a chance to assist them. We will have, we have a good process. I think we'll have good support in making sure that any duplication is identified and that we don't go there. It won't be perfect. There might be the occasional overlap, but better to overlap than have a gap and have people fall through that. All of us will be involved in deciding how this money is used, and we need to take that responsibility very seriously. We need to be very careful and very sure about what we're doing, but equally we shouldn't be afraid of what we're doing. This is an opportunity to help our district as we go through COVID-19 and the impact of that, to come out the other side better than what we were when we went into it. So if we can do that, if we can actually follow our vision of making Waitaki the best place to live, work, play, if we can utilise the fund to do that, then we will achieve something pretty special. This is an opportunity which we don't get very often. It's a challenge we don't get very often, thankfully. But it's a time to step up and actually be counted and say we're here to help our community, and this is one way that we're going to do. Thank you. Any further comment?
Very quickly, just I hope that the conversation Councillor Taverner and myself about when the EA and the grants committee will meet will be sort of taken into account when you in the chief executive structure meetings.
Yeah, no, definitely it's the opportunity to be, it will be normal practice to try and have it on meeting days and so on. So, we will all be meeting and so forth. It really depends, not knowing what applications are going to come through and the frequency and so forth, but we need to be ready for that. And we need to have a good process around inclusion. So that's all very good. Okay, I'm going to put it, all three of the clauses there. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against? It's carried.
Recorded.
Thank you very much. Right. Thank you also to others who worked on this and to Helen, Jerry, for your work on this. It's been appreciated. Yep. And there's a whole lot more work that you guys are going to do. So we'll see whether we can get some help for you on that. Thank you very much. Okay, moving to 7.1, agenda items on page 115.
I'm happy to move that recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Moved to Councillor McRovey, seconded. We'll let Mr. Hope speak to this.
Hopefully it's all right from over here because hopefully the report's finished by the time I get to the table. But, it is just as required by the original resolution, a summary of the expenditure that Council has incurred in relation to the response to COVID-19, broken down into several categories. Happy to answer any questions.
There's just very quickly, the accommodation that was referred to, that's for other individuals in the community. Is that correct?
That's primarily to foreign nationals.
Okay.
Okay, other questions? I'll put it. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
And against? Carry. Thank you very much. Right, now move on to 7.3, endemic economic recovery. Page 125. And welcome back, Mr. Quinn. Table, and if we can get through this quite promptly, I'm sure you'll be happy, and I'll certainly be happy as well. Mr. Lord, your worship. Hand over to you, Mr. Quinn.
Purely happy to take comments on this. We've been doing the modelling. We just have to caution against complacency that we probably haven't seen the worst in terms of job losses in the community, and that's going to happen in August or later in the year. Overall, we managed to do well with our primary sector supporting us in its associated industries, major impact coming in, hospitality, tourism, visitors, and wholesale trade.
Okay. Questions? Councillor Hopkins.
Very quickly, under local elections on page 132, can you give us any more information about the business-friendly approach regarding a large two-site manufacturing plant?
That was a facilitation where a local company wishes to make quite a big expansion and build, and it was purely in the efforts of making a business-friendly council.
So, is it going to happen?
Yes, there will be an application placed. We're preparing, or the company's preparing the application.
Can you tell us any more about the partnering of the overseas company with a New Zealand animal feed manufacturer?
We have put a company which is owned by Waitaki people in touch with New Zealand Trading Enterprise in Hong Kong to continue the discussions.
And just finally, very quickly, the MB skills leadership group identifying workforce and skills needs. When will we get, or will we get some data and information about that?
Yes, it builds on, well, this is part of the government's major moves in review of vocational education as well. There were a number of nominations from Waitaki have gone forward. It's a 13-person group to represent the Otago region. Also, another work being undertaken is by the Building Construction Industry Training Organisation, which previously had indicated a shortage of 4,000 building jobs in the region in the next 5 years. Obviously, they're having to redo those figures post-COVID.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Newton, then Councillor Tindale.
Thank you. Just wondering if there's been any further in relation to the Provincial Growth Fund's reallocation of $70 million for upgrades of my town halls, etc.
There is a department of council being led by property, so I might ask Neil if he has a comment on that.
Yeah, sure. Put in an application on Friday and we've had an acknowledgement back that they've received the application.
Any more specifics?
No,
I believe it is.
You know as much as I do.
I believe that we've had several applications within that from around the district. So because it involves, it's not all council projects. I'm not too sure we can say too much more at the moment. But certainly it's again, it's one of these funds. It's, you know, you've got a week. What would you like to do? Tell us how. And yeah, it's been a really good response, and just actually congratulations to Julius and her team pulling this together. Yeah, it's just a very interesting process when you get given such short time to make things happen. Right, Councillor Tindale.
No, it was on, I think, the same question.
Probably just a comment in regards to that PGF fund. I know that there are a number of Pacific churches around the region, Otago, South Canterbury and Waitaki, that are trying to pull together an application. They got theirs in, but they don't have the expertise that our council staff have, so they're still working through that process and they'll be given a wee bit of leeway. So just wanted to acknowledge that those community groups that are out there, they don't have the same skill set that we are privileged to have. So they're having to kind of fumble their way through these big processes. So yeah, just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Yeah, one of the groups, I don't know that there's too much council assistance, but you know, it's certainly a point in the right direction of things to go and do. But yeah, it was a whole committee, very ensconced in the community, know connections and so on. And I'm sure that can be an issue at times when you're actually having to try and invent the process yourself very quickly. So I'd certainly encourage any councillors who know ones like that to dig deep know and see whether we can help or take power and see if we can assist in some sort of way. Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kitchen. Yeah, can I just ask Mr. Quinn, at the top of page 132, your panel there regarding quarterly benefit facts by TA, because that in the job seeker number 520, and that is 0.3%. 0.3% of what? Question.
That's national.
National?
Yeah.
And then it says below overall about 6% of the working age population, age 18 to 64 in the district, are receiving some form of work-related government assistance. So
that's why I differentiated that to bring
right
to what it means for us here.
The number, total number of 1,166 is 0.4% of the national average. Based on population, how does that? What's our population? People national population.
Out on that one.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Probably about close.
Yeah. Your brain's pretty good. Very good.
22,000 out of 5.8. Councillor Norman.
Just noticing that we put up a couple of spectacular and awe-inspiring billboards to support local. I'm just wondering how much they cost us. Out of interest.
Approximately $500.
Goodness. Excellent.
405.
I do need to say the one that when you're entering from the north, I honestly thought an old sign had fallen off and that was what was left behind. That's harsh, I know, but they're really, for what we're trying to achieve, for $500, maybe we could have done something a little bit more flashy, potentially.
I do realise that on roadways, especially major roadways, things have to be simple, otherwise we run afoul of regulations about driver distraction. So it'll be a very simple message.
5 words max.
I think, yeah, it could have been larger. Would be a minor comment on that. But generally, I mean, it was something that was pulled together very quickly by our team.
If it had been larger, we would have put together a new consent. So it's
Shop local, love local.
Right. Councillor Hopkins. Sorry.
Just a comment on page 133, in regards to your statement that the Waitaki economy is not highly diversified. I think following the COVID situation, it's a good opportunity to look at how we can develop more in that space. I think it's quite crucial that we do. So we're not putting all our eggs in one basket.
It is part of reimagining.
Unconsistent market space to be able to build capacity of our community.
Okay, anything else? So I'd like to move to receive the information. Councillor McGrovey, thank you. Councillor Newton. Further discussion? Right, we'll put that. Those in favour say aye. Aye. And against? That's carried.
We're going to public excluded, make action.
Seconded.
Okay, Councillor Hopkins, Councillor Holding. Thank you. Those in favour, we're going to public excluded, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. So we'll just wait while the live stream goes off. But thank you very much for everyone who's joined us.